Andrew Ebom. Chloe's just been in a new Channel 4 documentary where they send you some places like dangerous places. She's been, she went to Mogadishu. She's been into Syria, nearly got bombed by the Turks, and so we're going to hear all about that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and we're talking about migrants cutting their tags off and just going on a wonder. The schoolboy murder the rapper on the BBC with the lyrics. Starmer paying damages again. U-turning, saying he won't pay damages. He's U-turning on everything. Isn't
He's a U-turn specialist. Thanks very much, Ash.
Thanks.
Stick with Ash. I'll take you through to 1 a.m. I'll see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Be there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, this is The Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould as paperwork is thrown across the studio at me. OK, we're going to be talking today about migrants and the number of migrants that are tagged who are going missing, but also, and I know you're not a massive knowledge about Hollyoaks, but what about this guy who died from vaping? I've got to tell you, I tried vaping once or twice. Oh my God, I'm almost hurled.
It was very worrying, actually. I mean, I know him quite well. He used to come on Talk a lot on Sam Delaney's show, and he was really a lovely man. And yeah, vaping, I don't quite get that. Well, I'd like to know more.
Well, I'll tell you what,
think it can just be vaping.
I'll tell you what happened to me when I tried vaping. I tried a drag and nothing happened. Tried a drag, then I tried it, and then I couldn't breathe. It was like drowning. I was virtually sick. Oh God, I'd never do it again.
Well, I vape all the time, but it's made me give up smoking, so it's a good thing. Even in bed. You know,
what, you gave up smoking in bed?
I gave up. Yeah, I did used to smoke. No,
that wasn't the reason.
Smoke in bed,
he had nothing to be a prelude to the smoking. Okay, so look, 2/3 of tagged migrants go missing. Absolutely shocking, this problem with illegal immigration, and the fact that I think we're going to have to follow what Sweden's doing, which is to say to people who are refugees to the United Kingdom, when the war's over, the refugee status will be revoked. I think that's a sensible thing to do. Anyway, talking of people who've sought refuge, we're here with Chloe Dobbs. She's a political commentator, but you've been doing a little bit on immigration recently, haven't you?
I have indeed. A whole month in the thick of it.
In the thick of what?
In Syria and various other places, trying to make our way back to the UK like an asylum seeker would.
Sorry, so you got dropped off
Dropped off into Syria, dodging ISIS, trying not to get caught as one of the infidels, managed to make it out alive, luckily. And then, well, won't reveal all, but we figured out why they're coming all the way from there back to the UK.
Okay, we this is a special surprise, Chloe. Come on, take it away.
Surprise!
Let's have a look at this promo.
Places we're going to. Dream outcome, come back alive.
6 opinionated Brits
People can call me racist, but my views are just basic common sense.
are going on an extraordinary journey
You won't get that in South Yorkshire.
to find out why asylum seekers are coming to Britain.
Is it too late to pull out?
Oh, don't shoot me yet. Now you can.
Have they bitten off more than they can chew?
Oh my God, what is this?
Syria is scary.
And will they change their minds?
I don't know what we're gonna do.
These kids eating trash. How come no one's helping them?
Why are we continuing to allow the boats in? We are full!
A new series, Go Back to Where You Came From, on Channel 4, coming soon.
Well, I think it's clear that is going to be an enormous show. You're one of the stars of the show, Chloe. I know, look, you haven't come on to talk about the show, and we don't want to ambush you too much. But I do want to ask you, what is, you know, why agree to do something like that? Was it purely because you're interested in television, or is it because you genuinely think it's important to understand why migrants do what they do?
I really wanted to understand what is going on. Obviously, illegal migration is something that we are all talking about, and it's something that, you know, we are having quite a democratic crisis in the country where we've got people crying out for both legal and illegal migration to be brought down, but we just, or at least the governments we've had, just cannot seem to stop the problem. So I wanted to look, first of all, I wanted to figure out, just beyond the channel, why on earth are they getting on a boat from France, which we consider a safe country, spending thousands.
Although, have you been to
thousands.
Paris recently?
Let's
just be clear.
It is pretty
Oh,
dodgy.
it gets fruity in Paris these days.
I wanted to understand, why is it all men? Why are there not women and children? Why are they taking such perilous journeys, not just to the first, what we consider a safe country, but then making it all the way to Britain?
But isn't the big problem, Chloe, that this show, and which I will watch, and it's going to be brilliant, the fact that it was a perilous journey doesn't mean that people who are not from a war zone should come to Britain.
Sorry, say that again.
Just because it was a perilous journey doesn't mean that we should be allowing people in.
Oh, no, absolutely not. But I think you've got to understand, in order to solve the problem, you can't just say, oh, we've got to stop them arriving on the shores of this country. You've got to really understand
I get that.
Exactly what's going on. I learned a heck of a lot on the last part of the journey in France, understanding why are they leaving France. We've given half a billion quid to the French to solve this problem. What are they doing about
surrendered.
it?
Why are they leaving? Because they don't get anything in France, do they?
Well, the thing is, so I cannot confirm this for certain because I haven't seen the physical letters myself, but I had conversations in Calais with several different migrants, different conversations, not people who were all mates, who all told me the exact same story. I said, why aren't you claiming asylum here in France? It's a safe country, why can't you claim asylum? And they said, oh no, I want to claim asylum here, but the French have given me a letter that says, you've got 7 days to leave the country, get out. Not, we're going to book you a flight or book you a train to go somewhere else, just saying, figure it out yourself, get yourself out the country in 7 days, you can't claim asylum here.
Right.
And we were all like, surely this is against like human rights laws, surely this must be illegal. But they're basically saying, get on a dinghy. Get on a lorry.
They've always ignored the
You need to find an illegal way to get out of here. And, you know, they send us the odd video of them slashing a dinghy on the beaches.
Yeah, of course.
To say, oh, look, we're spending your £500 million. Well, so, you know, I left really blaming the officials far more than the migrants themselves.
But in defence of the French, if you are in Calais, right, it's pretty obvious where you want to be.
Yeah.
Also, you're not going to get a 4-star hotel and all the luxury life that they get here. They wouldn't get that in France.
At best, in France, Chloe, at best, you would get a bag of onions and a woman with hairy armpits. At best. No, I'm joking.
And they speak English, don't they? You know, more than French.
Yes.
Well, so you do have a lot of them will stay in France. So, for example, migrants who have come from, let's say, a country like Tunisia, where they actually speak French, they will have their reason from moving on from Italy, for example, where they've arrived at Lampedusa, is because they want to go to a country where they can speak the language. Similarly, you'll have people who speak English but do not speak French or Italian who want to come to Britain for that reason. You've also got a lot of people, they'll choose a specific country because they have a family member or a mate there that they can stay with. But then the funny thing is, they'll come in the country and our Home Office, they won't allow them to go and live with their mate that they've come to see. They force them to stay in the asylum hotel at the to the expense of the taxpayer.
What you are doing effectively is you're saying, right, I fear that I'm going to be killed in a war. What I'm going to do is leave the wife and kids in the house that's going to be attacked, right, which is a dubious thing to start with.
The wives and kids.
And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick what country has the best economic prospects for me. Now, I've said this before, you look at Ukrainians. Ukrainians didn't sit there in Butcher and say, oh, I'll tell you what, Tokyo seems nice this time of year. It's not what they did. They sent the wives and children away and they stayed and fought. I don't believe any of this asylum nonsense. It's garbage.
They're just going on TikTok, aren't they? And go, look, Britain. Everyone's advertising. Come to Britain, you get this, and this.
Yeah, and what's happening?
And
by the way, Chloe, this is what he said before, because they're saying Britain will take you. That's the issue, isn't it?
So definitely what Britain has to offer is a massive pull factor for sure. So if you go to, for example, in Italy, you have to wait 6 months plus to have your asylum claim approved, but you're not given anything, anywhere to stay, or you're not able to work during that time. So you either have to sleep on the streets there, or move on to another country.
Or join the cocaine dealing gang that brought you over in the first place.
Well, this is the thing: is then people get up to criminal activity. So a lot of people.
You're turning soft.
On. No,
are you turning into a communist?
I'm not a communist.
No, are you turning into a communist?
I'm not turning into a communist.
So at the end of the show, where they go, has it changed their views? Did you go? I'll be honest with you. My main complaint was that there wasn't a big enough fence. Or did you go? No,
Spoiler alert.
I'm feeling very empathetic now. Oh, I understand what's going on. No wonder he didn't take his wife and children.
Yeah, it's Channel 4, so it'll be the latter one.
No. I do not think the solution is to allow them all to come to Britain. You're an absolute idiot and just someone who's fueled by emotion if you think that's the solution. And when you actually go out there and realise, there are millions and millions of people who are in terrible situations.
Yeah.
The number that we take in, it's not fixing the world's problems, but it's causing us a heck of a lot of problems.
What you do, the solution of the political left is to say the solution to North Africa's problem is to empty it of military-aged men. Well, that's not... Well, and also, if these people are all at war with each other, one would suggest that makes inevitable the problem that's happening in London, where many of these regional conflicts now take place in Tower Hamlets.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that if you bring the third world to Britain, you also bring the third world's problems to Britain.
You become the third world.
One thing we were absolutely gobsmacked by in Syria was how insanely nice the people were. They were like the nicest, most generous people we've ever met in our lives. People who've got no money to barely feed themselves are trying to, give you half of their dinner and be super generous.
We've given them half of our country.
But the reality
they probably give us half of theirs, but it's not worth. The problem is with the Syrian war. One day somebody will win and have to keep it. Somebody will lose and have to keep it.
But that's the hospitality thing.
It's always going to be a nightmare there. But the reality is, even if they've got a really lovely culture there and the people are extremely kind, people who live in poor countries, they're used to militias and gangs running the place.
Yes.
Crime is just the norm to them.
Yes.
That's what they're used to.
And corruption.
Yeah, you are going to have issues when you suddenly dump them into a country like Britain and they don't understand how we operate, they don't understand our culture,
but we've constantly said...
And there are going to be bad apples in that mix.
But we've constantly said equal but different. If you believe in voodoo, mutty magic, that's just the same as being British. If you believe that your wife should be subjugated and women shouldn't be educated and homosexuals should be thrown off buildings, that's just equal but different. And I'm perfectly willing to say, and I've said this before, look, the main problem with Syria is it's a dump. Right? And if you want to come over from Syria, that is one thing. If you think the number one thing that London needs is more Syrian culture, then I would suggest to you, I think you're very wrong.
It really was a dump. I mean, we were just absolutely gobsmacked.
Yeah.
I mean,
who was on
rubbish,
with you? Who was with the celebrities?
Absolutely everywhere. I had two people on my team, so we had two different teams.
So was it a race? Was it a race back?
No, it wasn't a race. It's not a competition. It's not. I mean, I guess it would have been quite fun. If you get eliminated, you get left in Syria, and we don't take him.
If you could have beaten Mr. Iqbal to the benefits office in Croydon,
maybe that's another show that you can create.
But who was on it? I mean,
that's called what should we call it? The Dhaka Dash.
Is it embargoed? Who you can't tell us who was on it? Who was on the show?
Embargoed.
No, it is out in the press now. I had on my team Dave, who's known as Chef Dave on TikTok, and I had Bushra Sheikh, who's another commentator on my team.
And were any of them were the faithfuls and traitors within the group?
Everyone got along extremely well, very, very
Sorry, I was making a joke about another TV show. Like, every night the traitors had to get together to decide.
Did you all have the same views, or were you all different?
No. So we had, Dave had fairly similar views to me. Bushra had very different views to me. So, yeah, we had a good mix. I think that there were more of us who were on the anti-illegal migration side, because it's kind of.
But do you not worry?
I want to see if we change our views.
Do you not worry that the purpose of this with Channel 4 was to go, look, what we'll do is we want to make a show that fundamentally says that everyone who comes to the UK as a refugee is a good person. Let's get a load of right-wing commentators, force them to live in the filth that these migrants live in, so that we can broadcast about how right they are to come and take over Birmingham.
I know a lot of people who were asked if they would be interviewed to go on this show, who just from the start said, no, absolutely no way, Channel 4 would be a bunch of lefty rubbish. I gave it a chance, and then I learned, after speaking to the people who, the producers whose show this was idea. Also, bear in mind it's made by a film company. Obviously, Channel 4 commissions it, but the film company, they are not all Channel 4 staff that live in. If you think.
Yeah, but if I'd have gone and really stuck it to the. But
they were very, very clear. The people who wanted to do this show, they really wanted to make sure that this was a show that was not biased, because they want it to be something that everybody can watch, and they're making the show with the knowledge that people across this country are absolutely furious. They understand that people in this country are not going to respond well to some left-wing rubbish.
Chloe, a non-biased programme would have embedded you with the people they left behind, and embedded me with the people they came to see. So effectively,
you got to wait for the edit as well. They might edit you to look bad.
No. If you said right, okay, what we're going to do is you're going to go to Albania to stay with the family of an Albanian drug dealer, and Andre's going to meet him in the Albanian drug gang. Let's see the results. Okay,
a caller's flooded in.
Funny show.
Janice is in Essex. Janice, you're on talk.
Oh, hi guys.
Hello.
Hi guys. I think the news yesterday was absolutely brilliant.
The what?
What news?
The news.
Which news? What, BBC, Channel 4 News? Which was brilliant?
Oh, come on, guys.
No, what are you talking about?
Which one? You mean the release of the hostages thing that might not be going ahead?
No. Well, Hamas apparently has gone blackmail again. Yeah. I'm not holding my breath on this. I sat here jubilant yesterday because I thought we've got to get this war stopped.
Right. But although can I say this to you,
Janice? It's not stopped, is it? It's just a temporary ceasefire.
Janice, can I say this to you? I'm not sure it is good news. Can I tell you why it's not good news? Because Israel, once again, has achieved what Israel often achieves: spectacular military defeat in the beginning of the war. Then what they do is they bottle it right at the end and release all the terrorists back to Gaza.
Yeah, in return for the hostages, they've got to hand back hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, many of which are terrorists.
They've promised to do it again and again, and Sinwar was part of the last release. So the mastermind of the October 7th was part of the...
Do me a favour, stop for a second. Explain this Sinwar thing in full, because when I heard I was shocked.
Khalid Shalit, the Israeli soldier, was swapped for, I think, 1,000, it might have even been 3,000 prisoners, and one of them was Sinwar, who went on to lead Hamas and form... So these 1,000 people will be just thinking of the next thing. So the war's not stopped. The war will continue. This is just, if it happens, it's just sort of a temporary ceasefire.
Can you imagine, Janice, going through all of this and then saying, well, actually, all the leaders of Hamas that are still alive and been captured have now been returned to Gaza to stick their hand in the till for as many years as it takes to rebuild their forces for another attack?
No, then you've got to have the Arab countries have got to step in and get them out. That's the only way.
But it's not going to happen.
I don't care if
you've seen how many fences Egypt have got to stop them coming anywhere near.
They've still got all a lot of the tunnels are still
What's going to happen? Janice, I'll tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen is, as usual, UNRWA is going to funnel money into Hamas. Your tax money is going to pay to rebuild their military forces.
Well, I will now.
Sorry?
I will now. I will be paying tax now, yeah.
So you're going to pay tax?
Taxes. My pension's gone above the threshold.
Oh.
So, about 50 quid.
But UNRWA is the UN arm of Hamas. That's basically, and we're supporting it.
I'm not sure. Right, I was happy yesterday because I thought all the bombing's going to stop. Maybe Putin's going to stop. Lebanon's going to stop. And maybe, Israel might have a chance.
Have you seen what Syria's just been taken over by ISIS?
Will have a chance. America's going to say they're not going to provide them with arms. How we get rid of Hamas, I have no idea.
I'll tell you what, Janice. I mean, we've had a bit of a go at you because we're a little bit sceptical. But I have to say, I think it's a laudable aim to be so convinced about peace. I mean, do you think that Israel will? Do you think that Israel will benefit from this? Because there will be people out there who will argue they've done as much as they can to denigrate Hamas, and now they've got to stop.
If Trump goes in, there'll be no Palestinian. He will go in and he will kill the lot.
Well, he won't.
And in a sense, I don't blame him.
Well, he won't do that, will he?
The Palestinian people should have shoved them out and said, like the Nazis did.
But the problem here, Janice, that I'm worried about is this. I mean, look, I accept that we bombed Dresden and not all Germans were Nazis and things like that. But we're getting confused in
What's their government, though? Yeah, they were bombing our citizens.
We're getting confused between two different things. I think the biggest victims on the 7th of October, and people are going to disagree with me, were actually the Palestinian people. But it was only the latest in a series of atrocities that have led them to ruin by their own leaders, financed by countries like the United Kingdom.
That they voted for.
Didn't
get a chance again, though.
Well, after the opposition parties were thrown off buildings, there's no independent.
And they're just as bad, the opposition.
Yeah, there's no opposition media. There's no opposition parties. There's no real debate. There's no what needs to happen? I genuinely think what should have happened on 7th of October or 8th of October is we should have turned to the Israelis and gone, you were right to wall these off. We're going to get somebody in to sort them out. The problem is all Israel can do is denigrate Hamas as much as possible. But I guarantee you, mark my words, we will be paying to rebuild Hamas and the money will start flowing next week.
And there'll be more attacks from Hamas. They never will stop.
More next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We did. Yep.
Carl, we thought we were going to get E-Ball on the microphone.
Is it Dr. Roger Gewolb again?
No, you're right. Dr. Roger Gewolb, we can always force into accidentally going over the break and accidentally saying something.
Dr. Andrew Geeborn.
Okay. Nothing's an accident. Everything's deliberate. And this is what people love, actually. It's those moments in between.
Right. You don't exist until I've introduced you.
How
long have you been in
Back in your box, behave yourself.
Because what's happening? Remember, I know you're here.
Oh, I don't.
Asha knows that you're here.
Oh, no, then.
Chloe knows you're here. The viewers and listeners do not know you're here.
I do now.
They do because they heard him at the start of coming out the ad break. Yeah.
Hey.
Okay. Joining us in the studio is the barrister and futurist and all-round good egg, Andrew Eborn.
What a shock! What a horror! It's so good to be back.
Oh, don't do that.
What? No, I love break the fourth wall. The most important people are there. I love it. The reason I do this show is because you're brilliant listeners and viewers around the world, and this is what they do.
Right.
I love it.
You were spotted, by the way, and we want to know what you were doing with Tim Davie, the boss of the BBC.
I was with Tim Davie.
Why? Not you as well.
No, I was there last night because I did a podcast. You did ask. I was there. I would do the podcast for the Royal Television Society. And yesterday we had I go traders. I love that. I love this sort of stuff. And so I was there yesterday, and it was a glorious, a really harrowing event. Actually.
No expense spared, I bet.
It was.
So was it glorious or harrowing?
Both.
Okay.
I
suppose like the Somme.
Yes,
glorious and harrowing.
They're obviously releasing a lot of documentaries about the Holocaust and things like that. And we went to go and see this. It's about the music in Auschwitz. Right. And it was a BBC programme which is coming out very, very soon. And that's what it was for.
Yeah, they had bands. If you could play something, you didn't get gassed.
Yes, that's right. So, absolutely horrendous.
Some great music. And on the way to the gas chambers, they'd play Mozart and stuff.
It was absolutely... It was harrowing. And they had
that wasn't in order to goad them. That was in order to delude them, wasn't it? The victims.
But they also had bands for the commandants there.
They did. They had about 8 bands, and that's what they talked about. And basically, they would ask if you could play something, you survived. And what was the harrowing moment? Somebody's just about to turn 100, I think, one of them. Somebody who could play the cello on that sort of basis. So that's what it was. That was the event.
Right. I don't want to be awful, but I can play the triangle. I don't think that doesn't count, does it? But can I ask you this question? You're talking about all these programmes about the Holocaust.
Yes.
I look, you know how on YouTube you can see which bits people watch the most of.
Yes.
And if you go to Holocaust documentaries, you know, you can see the macabre people, if you like, who deliberately want to see all the worst bits. To what extent is it? I mean, I know what Ash is going to say. Anything that gets the word out's important. But is there an argument that sometimes we go too far with all this stuff?
The problem
you wouldn't always say that.
No, but the problem is this: is we get, unfortunately, all these reports throughout all the media desensitised, and we must never let that happen. When you personify it, when you say this is an individual, this is a family, these are the people who are connected, that's how people relate to it. When things are just numbers,
people want it to happen again. They watch it and go, "Oh, good, let's do that again."
That's what we need to call out, and you're brilliant at calling that all the time.
But I think some people like it because for the same reason they like horror movies. By the way, I'm surprised at what you said. I'll tell you the reason I thought you'd go slightly different on this. Because do you remember when they had that very crass and insensitive advert for people to go and see Auschwitz on the trip to Krakow? Your view at that point was, even if people are going just for the notoriety of the place, at least they see it and understand it.
I went to Auschwitz. I saw it when I was in Poland, and it was just when Schindler's List came out. So beforehand, with a whole load of Polish people, we watched Schindler's List. I was in tears at the end. It's one of the most dramatic things.
Oh, God, yeah.
No, but it's because what happens is that they take the... Have you seen Schindler's List? So you see the thing, and at the end, they start showing the real people.
Oh, yeah, that's...
And then afterwards, the following day, I went to Auschwitz, and it's horrendous. And it's only when you sort of walk around there and you see the shoes, you see the other bits and pieces.
God. The hair,
it's absolutely disgusting.
Have you seen? There's I can't remember the name of it. It's an Iranian-backed charity, I believe, here in the UK that has contacted nearly 500 councils and universities, telling them to boycott Holocaust Memorial Day this year.
Wow.
Yeah, because they want to include Gaza in it.
On the basis that it's wrong of them to only talk about one genocide on Holocaust Memorial Day and not make half of it about Gaza.
Which wasn't a genocide, which isn't a genocide.
I mean, actually, that's a slight problem. I hate, Chloe, this sloppy language where people go, what is going on in Gaza is a genocide.
Well, they do it on purpose. It's not sloppy. They're doing it for a reason.
Whether you are in favour or against the operation, or whether you want to call it a war or a military operation, it is not a genocide.
What Hamas did was a genocide.
A genocide is where you wipe people all out, and the aim of the project is to wipe people out based on their religion, ethnicity, or whatever. What is happening in Gaza is civilians are being killed whilst the Israelis are trying to get Hamas.
It's urban warfare, and armies around the world are studying it to see how Israel are killing so few innocent civilians.
The reality is, whatever your political views and whatever side you're sort of supporting, if you like, any loss of life is horrendous.
Well, of course.
So I would absolutely, and this is what drives it home. And it wasn't just the Jews who were murdered.
No,
there were others, and that's why it's important. And each and every one of those, it's a human life. And where I come from, my only objective is about peace and to make sure that we do.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I think's important, and I just want to be clear for anybody listening, so there's some balance. Look, it is perfectly legitimate to be very, very strongly opposed to what Israel's done in Gaza. The fact that they've said there are human shields being used by Hamas and we're going to attack anyway. You can be critical of that, but that doesn't make it a genocide.
Yeah, right? I think it's a legal definition. You look at that sort of side and you go back to the reasons for it and so on and so forth. The reality is it's human life.
Of course
and if you look at that sort of basis, it's horrendous. And the arguments on both sides, it is horrendous.
But the media have colluded with Hamas just pumping out their propaganda. They just go 40,000 people have died, neglecting to say 20-odd thousand were
in this country.
And the first, we always say, the first casualty in war is the truth. And what we need to do is shine a spotlight, work out actually what did happen, and then turn around. And we always say, we'll make sure it never happens again. But it keeps on repeating itself.
I've no problem whatsoever in people criticising Israel and Israel's strategy. I mean, I've said myself, I think that they've performed pretty disastrously in many respects. But it doesn't make it a genocide. That's what drives me bananas.
But it's, as I say, it's a legal definition.
Yes.
You look at that sort of basis, you look at the whole history of it, about the Nazis and so on and so forth, why that came out, and you then talk about the International Court of Human Rights and all those sort of things. The reality is, go back to the principle, is people have died unnecessarily.
I'll tell you one thing.
That's war, isn't it? That happens.
I'll tell you one thing. I think the most shocking Holocaust film is Come and See, the 1986 film from the Soviet Union about the 1943 Belarusian genocide, where 1/4 of the population of Belarus were killed over the course of, I think, 2 months.
I know, absolutely. And people forget it. And this is
actually, in that film, it must be the only Holocaust film where there's only one Jewish person.
In Ukraine, there was 30,000 killed in 2 days, wasn't there? In the middle, by mainly Ukrainians.
Well, actually, it has to be
hyper obsessed with this one war. They're not talking about wars that have happened in other countries, Yemen, Syria, where millions of people in total. We were talking about Dresden earlier, we killed about I think about 500,000 people, and yet here, where we're talking about 30 to 40,000 people dying, of course, every single life lost is horrendous. But they're like, oh my God, this is a genocide. This is the worst war to have ever happened.
The problem is with Gaza.
They're completely blind to every other war.
Gaza is a social media war, right? At the end of the day, Hamas are deliberately putting human shields in there so they can film the remnants of them and send it around the world. And also, I have to say, you've got people campaigning against Donald Trump saying this, that and the other. Then you've got President Xi of China, 1.5 to 2 million Muslims in concentration camps.
Yeah,
nobody cares.
And Chloe makes a brilliant point, as she often does, is that...
That's quite right.
It's true. But the reality is the media tend to shine a spotlight on one particular story, and we forget all the other tragedies. And the reality is there's horrendous stories all around the world at the moment. What I really hope in 2025 is that with Trump coming in on Monday, effectively, we should start to hopefully get a more peaceful place. And wouldn't it be great if we start to get an end to these wars, whatever side you've been on in the past? Let's sort of campaign for that.
It's already happening, isn't it, with Trump coming in? Even Starmer's now changing his mind. A lot of people are U-turning. Qatar kicked out Hamas.
Absolutely. And that's the interesting thing. that basis.
So when we come back, we're going to show you this unbelievable front page of The Sun. And I'll give you a little précis. A young man was knifed to death by a killer who now has a secret identity. And lo and behold, there's a rap star on the BBC singing about how marvellous this killing is and how marvellous knife crime is in general. Wonder if the two are connected. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, so here we go. This is, I mean, I find this just absolutely extraordinary. A balaclava-clad rapper who boasts about killing and is promoted by the BBC can today be unmasked as the murderer of schoolboy Jimmy Misran. A Sun probe discovered 10, which is the name of the act, is Jake Fahey, 35, recently released from a life sentence for the 2008 murder of a gentle giant called Jimmy, who was 16 from South London.
Not much of a life sentence, that, isn't it?
Absolutely scandalous.
And he's not been rehabilitated, has he?
It's absolutely
he's proud of it.
No, and I think actually when you look at rappers' lyrics, and there's a number of rappers who have been in jail. I was looking at the list from 2 Chainz to.
Don't give us the list. It doesn't matter.
Oh no,
nobody knows.
Kelly. No, but the principle is exactly that. Rap music is a lot about those are the sort of lyrics.
It's the drill music specifically.
Exactly.
Andrew, I want to ask you this. So obviously, first of all, I appreciate you can't give legal advice, but you are a barrister, right? One would assume. So let me ask you about the law and the politics.
Yeah.
One would assume the politics is the Home Secretary is saying, I want this thing back in prison. Presumably being out on licence. So if you get a life sentence for murder, even if you're released, you're still on a licence for life. Can you explain that all to us?
So
hasn't he breached that with this?
So with sentencing, this is what it works. And they've tried to explain it more. They started televising the sentencing remarks from the judges. And the reason for that is to shine a spotlight. And they always say that sunlight is the best disinfectant. A lot of people have lost trust a lot of people have lost trust in the judicial system. And I always say that trust comes in on foot and leads on horseback. So what happened...
You've never said that before.
I have
Bingo.
T-shirts in there. The reality is this, however, they started to explain how sentences work. And it's supposed to be a science. And what they have the sentencing council who say for this particular crime, this is the tariff. And you turn around and you say, look, and you then listen to counsel. There'll be aggravating factors, which means you get a higher sentence, and mitigating factors, which bring it down.
Yes.
That's what happens.
But how long is it? He's had about 14 years.
Murder is compulsory. It's a life sentence. That's what they have to do. But they normally say they recommend a minimum sentence, and then that's how it comes into play.
So I'm going to ask a series of very easy, obvious questions because you're the expert. So what happens is I've got a life sentence. That means that my life will have certain restrictions forever, which you can explain. And then what will happen is I will spend a portion of that life sentence in prison. So I think we all understand the prison bit and the minimum sentence. What happens when I'm released?
So you're on something called licence, which basically means if you commit something else again, you're hauled back in. So you still get your life sentence, which means that you have restrictions. You might have reporting restrictions, curfews and so on and so forth, which apply for the rest of your life. If you're released on licence, if you commit another crime, you'll be brought back into court and you can work on that sort of basis. So looking, and each particular one, you say generalities.
But clearly it is, oh God, this is an awful thing to say.
Awful.
But it is legal. It is legal to talk about knife crime in a positive way, right? It is legal as long as you're not goading anyone to do it, you're not inciting. It's also presumably legal to taunt the relatives of a dead murder victim.
Yeah, it is.
Will he go back to prison?
Well, you know my views. I think absolutely. It's
no, but
horrendous.
will he? Not should he?
Is it illegal? Is he breaching his terms by, celebrating what he's done?
I would argue, and very strongly, that absolutely it's very clear in the public outcry about this, and we had brilliant Julia's show earlier, and you heard the public reaction, the disgust, the absolute disgust at the way this has happened. We need to do something.
But is he breaching his probation?
Will he go to prison?
Is he breaching it?
He's clearly shown that he's not rehabilitated.
Yeah.
If he's not actually committed a crime, but they can see that he's not rehabilitated,
and we don't want to prejudice what's going to happen in the judicial system. But the general principle they should look at that behaviour, and I would absolutely say that.
I mean, you're right. We shouldn't prejudice.
But there wouldn't be a jury in that, would there?
Couldn't I turn round and say, look, what we have here is a convicted murderer who has knifed somebody to death, a 16-year-old, particularly awful situation, and what his behaviour now suggests he's likely to reoffend.
Yes.
And probably is reoffending.
I think the case is so clear
that
you've got to do that. But what I don't like is being judge and jury in the media. So you're right, everybody's entitled to the fair representation. But for me, and for actually anybody listening to the facts that we have been given, it's very clear.
And my final question to you, and thank you so much for answering all these. When I was a kid, they had something called Her Majesty's Pleasure.
Yes.
That doesn't exist anymore, does it? Because my understanding is, in the old days, effectively the Home Secretary could keep you in or let you out, and it didn't really. There was no recourse to anything. Am I right or wrong?
Well, it depends on the sentence. Is the reality, and that's why they say when they're doing the sentencing, those are the factors. Look at mitigating, aggravating, so on and so forth. The circumstances of the murder, and we've seen a number of cases now, and they say that they always wonder why somebody got this sentence for murder and somebody else has got a much more lenient one, and it depends on the circumstances of the case. And the trouble with the media is that we only get a few sound bites. Cases sometimes go on for weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. And what happens is you're distilling that into little sound bites. The one thing I would say about the story, and I'm sure probably the only one in the studio who's going to stick up for this, I think it's wrong to bring the BBC on this, and I'll tell you why. Is that all they're doing, they are playing the rap music, which has got terrible lyrics anyway. They promoted it on BBC One Extra. They're not promoting him as a murderer. And some of the headlines have suggested it's the BBC promoting this sort of stuff.
But
what they're doing, they're playing rap music.
I know that rap music often has, bad lyrics. That's, maybe doesn't, about sort of treatment of women, for example, can be a bit dodgy, it can be a bit explicit. But the lyrics on his songs spoke about him sharpening his blades, spoke about pools of blood, for example. It was pretty dodgy stuff.
Drill music is insightful, isn't it?
And questioned whether they should be playing it on the radio.
Do you want me to have a read of an extract?
Have a look.
The Sun. So here we go. So this is just to be clear to absolutely everybody watching and listening to this. This is the rapper 10, who is in fact the murderer of Jimmy Misran, who was murdered aged 16. He's faced a life sentence. His name is Jake Fari. And let's see whether you think that the lyrics that he has written and performed demonstrate somebody who has been rehabilitated and safe to walk the streets. Sharpen up my blade, I've got to keep those necessary. Stay alert and kept it ready. Any corner could be deadly. Judge took a look at me before the trial even started. He already knows he's going to throw the book at me. I mean, that's not great.
He didn't. He was out in about 14. You should never get 14 years.
Oh no, sorry.
There's far worse language and lyrics than that. Yes.
Sorry. Let me go to another bit. See a man's soul fly from his eyes and his breath's gone. Seeing blood spilt, same floor he was left on.
And also watched him melt like Ben and Jerry's. I mean, the lyrics are disgusting. But what we need to do is then look at the whole genre, because what people will say is actually listen to this sort of stuff. Rap music is not pretty.
Well, drill music,
it's
sort of incitement.
Been listening to
exactly.
This.
It's sort of like an incitement, isn't it? Because gangs actually brag about what they did to the other gang.
And I was looking at the number of rappers who are in prison, who've been sentenced for whatever, and there's a long list, very easy to see, and some names we will know, we won't know all of them, but you look at the crimes they committed. It's that sort of culture.
Either way, I would suggest to you, before we go to a break, and I don't know if you can see it, and obviously those listening can't see it at all, but I'll describe what we're looking at. We're looking at a guy in a modified balaclava. He's sitting on a yellow Lamborghini. Obviously he works out, he's got all sort of quite cool tattoos. I think that is quite an appealing image to a teenager, and I think the fact that is being put out on our media is something to be extremely concerned
And can I just say, before we leave the story, my thoughts go to the family and friends who are directly affected by this horrendous murder. We always forget in this, it's all about a little focus on the criminal. The fact is, a family has been destroyed and torn apart as a result of this.
One final question. By the way, the gallery have just made a good point. They've played this, but they wouldn't play Freezing this Christmas.
No.
But let me just ask this question. And once again, I appreciate, Andrew, that I've drilled you for a lot of information. To what extent is this a proceed of crime? Right, because this man's lyrics are based on the murder of a 16-year-old that he participates in, that he has been convicted of. Is it not possible for the family of this young man to say that we want the proceeds of this to be taken off him?
Well, I think there's a wider picture, as I say. If you look at all of this genre of music, this is what it's about. And I think what we need to do is look at that as a society, with a clamp down on social media platforms now about what their responsibility, and they have to pay a percentage of their gross turnover if they don't deal with it. This is incitement. If you listen to the lyrics of this sort of stuff,
because each gang does it
offense.
About attack. I mean, the Cray Twins film, that's when they changed the law from the Proceeds of Crime Act.
I was going to try and give an example of incitement, but in doing so, I might break the law myself. But effectively, you're saying to me, it sounds like, look, the Home Secretary is going to be very keen to take action on this, but what the court's going to be interested in is that this person is clearly not rehabilitated and is clearly inciting, which in of itself is a criminal offence.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at those sort of things, but I think there's a more general thing. So it's not just this.
No,
you need to look at the whole music genre and to what extent we say there's freedom of speech as opposed to.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's go to a break, because I think Andrew's right. I think we should have a discussion about whether this type of music should be allowed.
Biggie and Tupac both murdered, and they were the head of their...
I was looking, there's a long list of rappers.
So coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about whether our society is giving the wrong message to young people by venerating this absolute rat bag. More next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, right, so we are going to talk about the way that the media is promoting violence, but during the break we were talking about various pop bands, and somebody talked about E17, and I happen to know this is crazy. So Stay Another Day is a moving song about the death of Tony Mortimer's brother from cancer, and about being in the ward with him as he died. Right, but when he died, apparently what E17 were told was, look, you can't have two blokes as a duo. It's just a bit strange, right? So we've only got Brian Harvey and Tony Mortimer. So Brian Harvey, who was working on a building site in Walthamstow, said, I know a couple of lads from the building site who wouldn't mind being in a boy band with us. So the other two, all they did was just stood there doing all the poses. Yes. They couldn't sing, they couldn't dance, they couldn't do...
Like Andrew Ridgeley.
Milli Vanilli.
They were just
neither of them did anything.
Exactly.
They were just a couple of plumbers who had been, do you fancy doing this? And that was it.
Yeah, but they're bloody good plumbers.
And it's great.
What's that?
And they got famous from that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So of E17, there was 4 of them, of which 2 of them were just blokes off the building site.
And nobody ever asked, why aren't those guys singing?
I think people did ask it.
Okay.
But no, any band is a fascinating story as to how they get together, and it's being the right place at the right time for so many of them. But Milli Vanilli, which I just mentioned, obviously they couldn't sing at all. You might remember.
No, they could, but they didn't.
But, well, it depends. But
okay, Andrew, I've asked you loads of stuff now. I want to talk a little bit to Chloe. I know this sounds pathetic, but you are the younger element of the room.
We're the same age. I just said
we're all the same age.
But how worried look, every generation is going to rebel against the older generation, but there are people getting in touch who say that, oh my goodness me, that there's a kind of alienated, second generation immigrant culture in the UK that has a propensity towards knife crime. That might be an unfair comment, but has a propensity towards this anti-establishment type thing. And bluntly, it is a terror of our inner cities that people are getting together into effectively ethnic gangs and going to war with each other, listening to this music.
Yeah, I mean, young people
I appreciate that doesn't happen in Oxford.
No, luckily not. Well, I'm sure that
there are gangs in Oxford. I think there are
a fairly relaxed place. Look, young people are really, really impressionable, and you make the very good point, Andre, that this guy on the front of the paper...
Yeah, looks cool.
He looks pretty cool, actually, with his cool tattoos and his Lamborghini. We know young boys, they love the look of fancy cars and whatnot. And you might say, oh, young people, don't be silly, they're not going to be sympathetic to a murderer. But we've currently got, if you go on Instagram or TikTok, you've got all of these fan pages for the Luigi guy that murdered the healthcare CEO in America. They absolutely love the guy because he's hot and he looks cool. You've got, you had a TikTok trend of people talking about how amazing Osama bin Laden's letter to America is. You've got people praising terrorists on there, saying 9/11 was a great thing. They're so impressionable, these young kids, so we do have to be careful about what they're listening to.
When I watch BBC London, and I genuinely think it is worth watching just to understand how bad it is, but every now and again, and Ash has said this loads of times, they have an inspirational youth leader in South London. Basically, you don't want to be in the gangs like I was and all this sort of thing. These schools in inner city London, they're not saying, oh, here's a former pupil, Andrew Eborn, who's a barrister. They're saying, oh, here's Keith, who stabbed 4 people when he was in a cocaine dealing gang. And I look, and I see these pictures of principally black and Asian young people in these classrooms, and you think, well, that's not happening in Tunbridge Wells. They don't go to, they don't go to my old private school and go, oh, Derek was an armed robber after he left the school, but he's now going to talk about how you shouldn't.
But they're not going to listen to Andrew because he didn't come, from where they came from.
I'll tell you.
Hang on a second, Andrew. But you take my point, Chloe, don't you? Which is that these inspirational youth leaders are all bloody washed up criminals themselves, and we're force feeding this to inner city kids when we should be saying, do you know something about 10? What we're going to do is we're going to drag him back to prison. We're going to boot his backside into solitary confinement in Belmarsh, and we're going to do to him what we successfully did to Tommy Robinson.
Well, I think he does need to be made an example of, so that he
Send
knows.
him to see Shamima.
So that he.
Parachute him in.
I actually spoke to her first husband.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's actually...
Did he regret it?
It's actually quite good.
Has she had more than one husband?
Yeah, she's had many. But look, we cannot be glorifying knife crime, and people need to be made an example of. The reason why you've got so many little kids running around London with machetes having duels in broad daylight is because they don't see their peers made an example of for misbehaving.
Yeah.
You've got people who have been found with machetes and knives by the police, and they say, "Oh, it's all right, just give them another chance." Next thing you know, they've murdered someone.
And you also need, as you say, proper role models. At the moment, it's very negative role models, people like Andrew Tate and so on and so forth, who degrade women and make those sort of things. And people look up to them because they think, oh, they're rich and famous and it's outrageous. We need some good role models. You need some good people who live wholesome without being boring lives, and to show that good is okay.
You need both good role models and proper policing. It's got to be a
But they're not cool, are they?
If it's the case that if you're found with a knife, that's it, straight to prison.
I don't know. Beckham happily married. I mean, there were allegations, but I don't think they were true. Beckham happily married, phenomenally rich, phenomenally successful.
And he should be. And I think what the trouble is now, what people want to do, if you ask a lot of the younger generation now, all they want to do is be famous. Yes. They suddenly turn around, there's a TikToker, and you do the other bits and pieces, and here's somebody on Instagram, and I can do this on OnlyFans or whatever.
Since X Factor, really.
And that's what they do. And what's happening now, that whole thing of Andy Warhol, your 15 minutes of fame, that becomes their inspiration.
Yes.
What we need to turn around is some people in the public eye to be good role models. Say, actually, it's okay to do good in this world.
But the actual...
Treat people with respect, and that should happen.
But the actual authorities, everyone can see through, they're actually bad people, aren't they, overall? You can see the establishment...
There's good and bad in everybody. If you prick me, do I not believe?
But not really with the council,
laugh,
not really with governments and institutions. We can see they've all been captured and they're all feathering, they're all bent. And so if you're one of these, you go, why am I going to look up to them? They're just criminals,
not all bent, but some of them, as soon as we shine a spotlight on it, more and more revelations are coming forward. And what happens is the reason people are not calling it out is because it's the sign of hypocrisy. And they've got their own things in their closets, a lot of them, to turn around and say, we're not going to do it. So what we need to do, let's work on the basis that we should be looking for good in 2025, find those good role models, because society will be better as a result.
All right, I'm going to be crass for a minute. Right, you are pretty rich and pretty successful. Fact.
Phenomenally.
Right, OK. So what you did was worked hard at school, went to a decent university, became a barrister, moved to London to live in digs in the inns, of course, and all that sort of thing. You know, the reason I'm doing the job that I'm doing now is because I like debating at university, at school and university, and became quite good at it. Right. Nowadays, everyone's like, oh, let's get a photo of my dinner on TikTok. And you think, no, I would never compare us to this guy. But, you know, Elton John always made the point that fame was the price he paid for having to be an international rock star.
Absolutely.
He loves music. He's brilliant at it. He wanted to do rock music his entire life. And so the fame element was what he had to do in order to build that business.
Absolutely. And this is the problem, is people in social media are living a lie. People only post their best thing. Everybody assumes...
Sun always shines on TV.
Of course they do. And there's a great song there somewhere. Very good. Everybody assumes that somebody else is having a better life.
Yes.
And as a result, it causes things like mental illness and depression and so on and so forth. The reality is, life is not great for everybody. Everybody has issues. The more we can talk about it in the public eye, the better. And also talk about how you can cope with it.
And I've heard this saying the other day, and it's true. Instagram eats first. Right, you save up the whole month or whatever to go to a lovely, expensive restaurant. Then you meticulously photograph the photo. I mean, it's like, here's my dinner. Oh, just eat the bloody thing.
Yes.
I know. I mean, I hate people having their phones out at the dinner table constantly. I know if you're having a conversation and you reference some really funny video and then you're like, oh, let me show it to you quickly, then fine. But I think if you have your phone out at the table, as all these young people do, if I'm talking to you, Andre, and then I'm just texting at the same time, it's like you're talking to me and I just turn and start talking to Andrew and completely ignoring you.
Well, you do that,
rude.
yeah.
But I mean, just speaking of, we've been talking about...
absolutely right.
I like taking pictures of my dinner.
We've been talking about male role models, but also there's a huge crisis for female role models as well. We've just had Bonnie Blue. Bonnie Blue is everyone's role model now. And,
Who is Bonnie Blue?
She's
Is that the
A
one
girl
who
who's
got
just slept with
1,000
over
people?
1,000 people in 12
it was
hours.
awful. Wasn't
But
that
girls
awful?
are seeing, I can get really rich and famous if I do this stuff online.
600 grand a month.
I get these Instagram pages come up on my feed saying, "Oh, follow my account because I'll show you how to make 100k a month selling foot photos and doing OnlyFans." It's appealing
I've got to say,
It does sound appealing.
Bonnie Blue slept with 1,000 men. I've got to be honest with you, I've been to Salford as well. OK, we'll be back with the pay-per-view straight after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome. This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Asher Gould and our guest co-host this evening, this morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Andrew Eborn and Chloe Dobbs. So straight over to you, Asher.
Morning.
Right, let's start with the Daily Express. Win your food shop for a year, but that's not the main story. The main story is a very serious story. Why aren't you wanting to find out the real truth? And this is about the grooming gangs. A woman repeatedly raped as a child by an Asian group. Well, Asian grooming gang has demanded that Keir Starmer holds a full national inquiry, as past reviews have not even touched the surface. Anyway, they've basically announced today they're not really going to do a full one.
Well, this is what, so Fiona Goddard, and good for her for coming out. She said,
and we need more of this.
We need more of this. She was saying that they were silent until Elon Musk basically shone a spotlight on this. It is scandalous. I also hate it's scandalous about the euphemism of calling it grooming gangs. They are child rape gangs.
And torture, rape and torture gangs. I mean, what they did there, I would say, is up there with the Nazis. I mean, they're torturing girls and raping them. I mean, this is...
However, can I just be clear? Because the press preview goes out on the early breakfast, let's stick with grooming gangs, even though it's an irritating euphemism.
Yes, OK. We'll call it an irritating euphemism.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I know why you're saying what you're saying. And
all credit to this lady who's speaking out. It is horrendous. I always talk about grief. As soon as you personify it, and then people understand what's happening. happening, because otherwise it's just a numbers game. It has been appalling. All credit to Elon Musk for shining a spotlight
Exactly,
on
and
it.
they're shooting the messenger like they do with, you know, Tommy Robinson. Well, no matter what they did, it's what they're highlighting. If someone called 999 and go, there's a girl being raped, there's a murder gun, and they go, well, have you got a criminal record? Oh, we're not coming round then. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
It's nice to see that the pressure has got to the government a little bit, in that they've made a bit of a U-turn and come out and said, oh, we're going to support 5 local inquiries. But it really is just too little too late. And the big problem is that although inquiries in the past have revealed a heck of a lot of victims, the thing people are really crying out for is for officials to be held to account, people in councils, people in the police, etc. When you haven't got the statutory power to force people to turn up to inquiries, it's very difficult to hold those people to account. These government-backed local inquiries that are going to happen, they will not have this statutory power, which means I'm sure once again you'll see no one held to account for turning a blind eye to little girls being abused in such horrendous ways.
I think that's right, and I think there's a really critical point here for me. So I thought that Keir Starmer made a reasonable point at PMQs when he said, look, I'm a former professional prosecutor. You know, these sorts of crimes lead to significant mental health problems. It is hard to get all of the victims together, and it's hard to ensure that they're lucid. Some are very lucid, others have been so harmed that it's quite difficult to do. And I think that's a reasonable point. But I thought Kemi's point was better, which is this. Actually, this isn't really as much to do with the victims and the perpetrators as it is to do with the wider context about how was this allowed to happen. Because look,
the cover-up, isn't it? Really?
We can throw local officials to the wolves, and by goodness me, that would be better than what we've done already.
And the whole
however, the question is, why was this systemic failure something that took place?
Exactly, and this is why nobody should be resisting a public inquiry into this.
Yes, I agree.
What we need
Especially
to look
Jess Phillips, the woman.
Exactly, no, and I know Elon's language was a bit colourful and so on and so forth. But the reality is this: all we want to try and do is shine a spotlight on this to make sure it doesn't happen again. But also, there are two interesting things. There's the difference between criminal liability and civil liability.
Yes.
And if people have been in breach of their statutory obligation about the duty of care, then we need to look at that, because there could be actions on that sort of basis.
But see, once again, and you know, whenever I have a lawyer in the studio, I always try to exploit them as best I can, simply because it's an exploitative business. But what I was going to say, Andrew, is this. Presumably, you would say, as a lawyer, that the reason why you have a public inquiry is because this is neither strictly or entirely a civil or a criminal case. What it actually is there is a criminal case element. There is a civil case element. There's also a professional misconduct element. But what there actually is a governance issue.
Yes.
And the only way that you're going to look at the governance issue is if you have a public inquiry.
Yes, and two issues. And the reason they always put up, two arguments they put forward. One, they say there's already been a report, we don't do it again. And the other is it takes so long, we won't get it forever. Both of those are false premises. The first thing is there's no harm in shining a spotlight. Trust, they always say, comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. The reality is exactly that. There's an all-time low in terms of the authorities. If they've got nothing to hide, a full investigation should help. The other bit about taking a long time, it shouldn't take a long time.
No.
And there's no reason it shouldn't delay the other matters. You can get some people will turn around, and we could get it privately funded. There's a suggestion that people might turn around and get that.
I always hate, and we'll move on to the next paper, I always hate these people who go, I don't feel it'd be appropriate to comment until the report's done. Oh, for God's sake, what a load of garbage. You can comment quite openly. If you need to apologise, you apologise.
Exactly. And the whole point is we'll get to the truth of the matter.
But they won't know. They'll fudge it like the last one. And the news inquiry say we can't talk about it now because there's an inquiry going on. I mean, really, we know what's going on. There needs to be, you know, police actions all over the place, mass arrests, and then have the inquiry.
The general public won't let that happen now. And thank goodness, I say again, for Elon Musk and others, Maggie Oliver, who's shining a spotlight on these matters to make sure it doesn't come out of public discussion.
I'll tell you what I would do if it was me. If I was the British Home Secretary or Prime Minister, I would get onto Zoom, right, with all the chief constables in the country, and I would say, get your uniform and a patrol car, right, because I want you to free victims who are chained to radiators tonight. I don't want you to report back to me. I don't want you to do, a strategic review or any of that. I want you to get your backside out of this building and start freeing this and deal with this problem right now. And you do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And more people will come forward when they know something's going to be done.
Correct.
So all praise to that lady who's come forward on the front page of the Daily Express. Well done to her for doing that, because other people will hopefully talk about their experiences so we can actually get some action this time.
OK, the next one's the Times, isn't it?
The Times, yeah. Attorney General was paid 30 grand for representing Jerry Adams. The Attorney General has been paid £30,000 to represent Jerry Adams against IRA bomb victims in a High Court case that is due to go to trial next year, the Times understand. Lord Hermer case.
OK, so Rich, so you and I are going to come to blows over this slightly, aren't we? But first let's go to Chloe. Right, here's my view on this. Lawyers will say, well, I've got to take whoever walks through the door. Everybody knows that Matrix Chambers, where Richard Hermer is from, where Keir Starmer is from, specialise in bluntly working for the absolute worst wrong-uns in the country, getting compensation for Levi Belfield, for, representing. They're currently attempting to get Anjam Chowdhury's sentence reduced. All the IRA guys, all the terrorist guys, all of these people.
Didn't he represent the parents of the alleged Southport attacker?
Yeah, but let's not do that because it's going to court next week. Yeah. But they're all with Matrix Chambers. I mean, I've said this jokingly, but to what extent is this not part of the problem? But to get Richard Hermer and others sitting there going, we're just lawyers, we take any cases. Yeah, well, why is it that they're always terrorists?
Look, I don't know much about Matrix Chambers, but
it's the Matrix.
I keep hearing case after case after case of people like Keir Starmer representing people who conveniently are bad guys. I don't think any of the public are convinced that lawyers are completely neutral these days.
I make the joke that Matrix should be a prescribed terrorist group. I'm not serious about that, but I have to say to you, they have found brilliant ways of getting £1 million settlements for murderers.
I'm going to put this in.
Go on, Andrew. Okay,
go on, Andrew.
So lawyers are servants of the court. That's what they are. They're not judge and jury. They're there to represent whatever client is and to put their case. They cannot lie to the court.
No,
so that you've got to work in terms of those sort of regulations. Look at it the other way. If they turn around and say, we're not going to take your case because we think you're guilty, that would be far worse than actually giving somebody a case and representing them, make sure they have an appropriate mouthpiece. And I think that's what we have to do.
But that's not the allegation that's being made. And the allegation, by the way, might be wrong, and so I'll let you respond, Andrew.
Yes.
But the allegation is that specialist solicitors firms trawl the worst rotters in the country in order to come up with cases that are effectively vexatious, to just sue over and over and over again. Anjam Chowdhury has been convicted and sentenced for being involved in 90% of the terror plots in Britain. And this Gareth Pearce and her outfit go, I know what we need to do, get £1 million in legal aid to try and say he's been hard done by. Why can't we just leave him?
Well, but the reality, as I say, is that lawyers are not supposed to be judge and jury. They had to be reliant on the justice system. So if somebody are doing things in an inappropriate way in that justice system, then absolutely we should call it out. But lawyers are there as a mouthpiece.
But why is it always the same firms over and over again? The reality is, look, Gareth Pearce and her chums are the ambulance chasers of the terrorist world, aren't they? Right? They're going out, they're actively soliciting for work. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, they're called solicitors, right? But they're actively seeking work from people who are who they encourage to file human rights cases, that really just demean the country, cost a fortune. I mean, if I said I wanted to marry my partner and spend £1 million on it, I don't get anything like that. But Levi Belfield gets to sue the prison service.
So what we need to do is to make sure that the justice system itself is right. If people are abusing that system, then we need to call it out. But basically, as I go back to the central point, is that lawyers are not judge and jury. They're there to be a mouthpiece to present the best possible case.
How many Al Qaeda terrorists have you represented?
I'm an intellectual property lawyer.
All right. Right.
So the answer is, of course, no. But I have represented people. That's what
We'll
you do.
leave it there,
as a
then.
younger lawyer, you do criminal cases and various other cases and so on and so forth. But all we are, and this is why people say...
But if the Islamic State wanted you to trademark their brand...
If they invented a new type of, IED, you'd have to... The technology...
there's a difference from a commercial side to a criminal side. Everybody's entitled to a fair trial.
Here we go.
No, but they are. Everybody's entitled to a fair trial.
OK, I'll tell you where we'll leave it before we go on to more stories. We will say that whilst you insist that lawyers are neutral, you wouldn't represent the Islamic State yourself.
I will reserve judgment, my lord. No. The reality is this, is that you mustn't be, and part of the thing about being a lawyer is you're a servant to the court. And as a servant to the court, all you're doing is presenting the best possible case.
So you've got to be impartial in some way.
Well, not only impartial, but you can't lie to them. No. All you can do is say, and we have to remember the justice system, and it's right, it's this way, everybody's innocent until proven guilty.
Right, Asha, you've got to talk about Donald Trump, please.
I love the photo of Donald Trump.
So can we just explain what he's done? Donald Trump has released his official portrait for his presidential inauguration, and he's pulling the same face as the mugshot in Georgia,
which made him millions because he put that on mugs and T-shirts and everything else.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It was
great press for him. That is comeback of the year award.
Brilliant.
From mugshot to photo of you being inaugurated as president. That's quite a comeback.
Next story in the Times, looser loan rules could get economy on the move, so they're going to make it easy to get mortgages. I mean, what can go wrong? We've never seen
as long as people can afford to pay it back, otherwise you're going to have a big problem, aren't you? And that's the problem.
Yeah, that sounds smart, doesn't it?
An overworked young staff signed off with stress. Almost a third of young workers were signed off work with stress last year, researchers found. What do you think, Chloe? This is your generation. Lazy young people,
I've just been watching earlier today, I don't know if you saw Fraser Nelson did that documentary for Channel 4 on the benefits crisis, and it is just absolutely shocking the number of people signed up.
I think over half of households are on benefits now.
What they do in the NHS is it's just an easy way out for them to give them a GP sick note to say, right now you're on benefits, because then they don't have to treat them anymore. They get put on benefits. They're not given any treatment for their mental health problems whatsoever. They're just left to wither away. Often their mental health getting worse, being sat at home.
If they had it in the first place, a lot of them swing the lead, don't they?
Well, it's extraordinary.
Well, the thing is, I think that there are definitely issues with mental health getting worse. I think especially with COVID and everything, there definitely also is an issue with far more people being diagnosed than actually having.
But they know what to say. You go, oh, I'm depressed. I can't go.
Well, that's the thing.
Can I just say this?
If you say I'm suicidal, straight away full max benefits. That's it. They won't question it.
But hang on a second. I've said this about mental health problems. I mean, I think nowadays people go too far. For me, a mental health problem is where you are medically unwell. You have an imbalance in your brain that causes, say, depression or whatever for no good reason. There are other people who are depressed for good reason. Right. I was fairly depressed during lockdown because A, I was under house arrest living on my own, and B, my mother was dying in hospital and I wasn't able to see her because of the lockdown. Now, look, I genuinely think there is an element where we're being unfair to young people. Yes. I think we are battering them. I mean, I've never seen Julia Hartley-Brewer virtually cry, but I'll tell you what, when she was talking about the fact her daughter's first summer as a teenager was going to be her locked up at home, she was really genuinely upset about it. I mean, I think what with the pressure of impossibility to buy a house, with the fact that inflation's out of control, so everyone's in poverty, with the fact that you can't blooming heat your house because of the cost of it, with the fact that social media is making you feel like a failure, with the fact that Photoshop makes you feel ugly, the streets aren't safe. All of these things are contributing.
There's just not much hope for the future.
To a low level mental health problem that everyone's got.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. And there should be proper protection and support in place. And it's when people abuse that's when you need to shine a spotlight on it. But you're right. We don't want to devalue or take away from the proper care. The statistics, however, are alarming. Almost a third of young workers were signed off with stress last year. But those over 45, it goes to 1 in 10. So there's got to be something wrong there somewhere, doesn't there?
They are just left to wither away. The NHS does not help them. If you're lucky enough to get an appointment, all they will do is prescribe you some drugs, and then off you pop, which is just a sticking plaster. They're not giving people proper therapy, and these people who are young now, they may stay in the benefit system for the rest of their lives.
It's easy to. I mean, this was the tragedy of the lockdown. It's easy to deal with 50 people who have a mental health problem. When you've got 4 million of them, because of the way they've placing somebody under house arrest. I mean, I was placed in solitary confinement. Let's be clear, because I'm living on my own during a lockdown. That is solitary confinement.
Awful.
Right. And so what are you expecting people to be like? And so why is the NHS deluged? The NHS is deluged for the very reason that we saw. Protect the NHS, stay at home, save lives. That's why the NHS is deluged with mental health problems.
And it's right. And let us be the generation that talk about mental health so the next generation don't suffer the stigma. And that's what I admire. People in the public eye who have genuine mental health issues. I mean, Tony Slattery, we lost him a few days ago.
But they don't get the help because there's not enough funding, because there's people swinging the lead.
Yeah,
but disabled people aren't getting looked after properly.
And this is the point: is we make sure that people don't abuse. Make sure there's a proper system in place, and abusers of that system are called out. But those who need it, make sure they get proper care. Because you're right, people shouldn't be waiting forever.
But I've seen it up north. I've seen it up north where what happens is somebody gets made redundant. You know, they're fairly sprightly to start with. You know, after 2 years, they're drinking special brew and eating pizzas, and that is
having
a medical
the time of their lives.
Well, no, but that will cause you medical problems. You will be depressed. You will be obese.
But also, we mustn't put people in cotton wool. Life is not good. And I think the more we should do is teach people that life is not good. It's how you cope with it. And talking about that, how people cope in different things, I often will talk to people in the public eye just about mental health issues, how they cope. And just walking out in fresh air in countryside is a great way of...
So we need to tell them life isn't good.
No, but life isn't good.
That's not very optimistic. Hey, kids, life isn't good.
Life is sometimes rubbish. But it also sometimes is great.
It helps you, actually. The hard times help you.
It's what we were talking about earlier on social media. It paints one picture to people. You assume everybody else's life is lovely and therefore your life is rubbish. The reality is everybody suffers. If you prick me, do I not bleed? If you tickle me, do I not laugh?
I'm not trying that.
We'll find out in the break, won't we? Yeah, we'll try that.
This is not the BBC.
Talk about mental health. It's important, but make sure that people don't abuse the system.
Okay, a lot of people...
Chloe, we're going to go to a break. Oh, no, do finish the point, actually.
We talk about people abusing the system, and some people genuinely are being bad apples, but you have got people who are genuinely terrified to come off of their benefits, because you could declare, go to the doctor, say, I think I'm fit to work, then you've no longer got your sick note to say you're on benefits now. You go get a job which pays you barely any more than what you were getting on benefits, and then let's say you get sacked from that job a week in, then you've got no income. You might get a little bit of universal credit job seekers allowance, but it's going to be nowhere near what you were getting on mental health disability benefits. So it's very risky.
You go back to the doctors and say, I'm depressed again from the
story I always tell.
You might end up with no income for a long time.
The story I always tell was that they redid all the terrace houses in Lee in Lancashire or Greater Manchester, depending on which way you look at it. The place looked absolutely brilliant, and every now and again there would be a house that wasn't refurbished, which had a terrible door and all the old cladding that was awful. It hadn't been sandblasted. And I met somebody and they went, oh, they've redone my streets. And I went, oh, who was that awful person who hasn't redone the house? And the bloke went, it's me. I went, well, why didn't you redo it? He said, because if you were unemployed non-benefits, then you got it done for free. If you had a job, you had to pay £4,000, and I didn't have the £4,000. He said, the problem with this country is, by working all your life, you're the one that's made to be the scumbag.
Yeah, and we've got to incentivise people to make sure they do it. And actually, they should do it. It's not just about the money, and don't worry about losing the benefits, because it's a real concern. You've got to make sure society looks after others in that society. We need to be a better place.
Great. Well, we're going to continue with the paper review straight after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. This is the paper review with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. And we're joined by our guest co-hosts, who are Chloe Dobbs and Andrew Eborn. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello. Nice to be back.
Great.
Right. Oh, look, there's Mike Graham. He's coming up in a bit. He's got an orange glow around him, so he's having ready break this morning. Right, the Daily Mail. You won't remember that, Chloe, but that used to be the Ready Break adverts.
They did. They were great, those, weren't they?
They were great. Bring them back. Bring back the Ready Break advert.
Absolutely.
Labour blasted Daily Mail. Labour blasted over toothless grooming probes. Ministers finally announced local reviews into child abuse scandal, but critics insist full national inquiry is needed. Labour faced fury last night for launching toothless small-scale probes into the grooming gangs instead of a full national inquiry. Yvette Cooper announced 5 local reviews into badly hit towns. This is a fudge. Chloe, what do you think about this?
I think it absolutely is a fudge. Now, she's only offering 10 million quid for these investigations, and just for context, the Telford inquiry, which supposedly these ones are going to be modelled off, that one alone cost 8 million quid, and we've apparently got to investigate 5 towns with only 10 million quid.
And what was Grenfell? That was like 100 million, and the post office scandal.
So this is really, really limited. They clearly felt the pressure. They felt the need to do something after you then had Labour MPs. You had Sarah Champion, the MP for Rotherham, standing up and saying we need a national inquiry and asking if this will have statutory powers, which it doesn't. But it just goes absolutely nowhere near enough. They're just ticking a box saying, look, we did something, we listened, but it's probably not going to have that much effect. It's better than nothing.
It's a moral stain.
Is it better than nothing? Because it's sort of brushing it under the carpet and getting away for a real investigation.
It's a moral stain on our society in the same way as we had the post office scandal, the blood scandal, and other bits and pieces, and it's taken the media to shine a spotlight on it.
But even then, the post office are not punishing anyone from it.
The reality is that if there is a full national inquiry, it is probably going to expose a heck of a lot of people in the Labour Party. Most of these places where they had grooming gang hotspots had Labour-run councils.
Sorry, just to be clear, just because we don't want to start a conspiracy theory, it will expose lots of people in the Labour Party for having been incompetent and complicit rather than being the perpetrators.
Yes, for turning.
But if you're complicit, you're just as bad as the perpetrators, aren't you? I mean,
you could
what we need to do is go.
But that's why the Labour Party don't want to do a national inquiry.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer keeps standing up saying, "Oh, we're not doing it because the ICSA inquiry is sufficient." We know that it did not cover the kind of grooming gangs that the whole nation is talking about. Everyone can read through it. This is a case of Keir Starmer not doing the right thing morally because it suits his party politically, and that I think is pretty immoral.
And the important point is that we go in with an open mind and say, look, what we're going to do, not working backwards from the story. We don't necessarily know all the information.
Yeah,
some of the information that we have seen raises all sorts of questions which need to be answered. So we suspect there will be other issues which have been buried, if you like, and it's only by looking at those issues that we can basically deal with this issue. And I think that's the important point. And so just putting tiny little bits, a plaster on a gashing wound is not the way to approach it.
Absolutely. Although the other argument the other way was Simon Danchuk has said, he's a former MP for Rochdale, he said, I fear that if there was a full public inquiry, the Labour Party would ensure the terms of reference were so tight as to make the results meaningless.
And then the public are not stupid. They are brilliant. They've all got behind this now.
Yes.
And I would urge everybody, don't let it go until we have answers to all of those questions.
Could Nigel Farage, he's threatened it, have his own, pay for their own.
As I mentioned earlier, what they're looking at, they can turn around and say, well, how much does it cost? We'll raise the money for that. And
but the thing is that wouldn't have the statutory powers to force people to turn up, which is very problematic.
No, but I'll tell you what you could do.
But it would stop Labour from meddling with the terms of reference.
I'll tell
you what you could do, which would send them absolutely apoplectic. There is a thing called an all-party parliamentary group, which is called an APPG, which is a parliamentary committee. It's not one that has legislative power, but it's still an official body in Parliament. You can set up the APPG for the investigation of grooming gangs and run the committee from a committee room in Parliament and have all the hearings in there. Yeah. That would go off.
And the reason Nigel has mentioned about possibly raising the funds is just to deal with one of the arguments as to why they wouldn't do it. So they turn around and say, well, it's funding, we've done it already, it would take too long. You can deal with all of those arguments. The whole point is the public demand answers and deserve answers.
Right, yeah, The Guardian, no Israel vote on deal until Hamas agrees to all terms. Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel's cabinet will not meet to vote on the ceasefire deal intended to pause the war in Gaza until Hamas accepts all elements of the agreement.
What a remarkably stupid story.
But one of them has actually been killed. The 34 is actually, Hamas said, oh, they died yesterday from an Israeli shelling. I don't believe that at all, but what's your point then?
Well, this is a remarkably stupid thing. So let's get this straight. The Israeli government has put together a peace deal that's been agreed. The formal ratification of it is not going to happen until the other side say, we intend to ratify it as well.
It's complete nonsense. So what's going to happen is going to delay this until Donald Trump comes in on Monday and deals with it, and he will get the solution. Behind it is disgusting, all the delays and everything else, and there was so much hope put on that sort of thing, and it's changed by the hour, didn't it? It was that roller coaster of emotion. I suspect, however, it's not going to be until Trump's in, and Trump said he's going to end all these things in a very short space of time. I think that's what's going to happen.
Talking of Trump, what do you think about Keir Starmer not being invited to the inauguration, but Alex Phillips was?
It is extraordinary.
Fantastic.
Well, and it's very clear, you know, and I was discussing this on my show this morning with Errol Musk, I thank you, who's on my show virtually every day. And I tell you what, I didn't mention, it's the one time it's got to be good.
Yeah,
but
bingo.
I'll tell you what,
obsessed with him.
it's bingo, it's got to be good. No, but the important thing is this, is that if you can get access to somebody who's talking about those direct stories, and the reason is this, Trump is not a forgiving person. The thing that Starmer said about him, the thing that various people, David Lammy said about him, he's looking at that and saying, why would I invite these people if I've got an opportunity
isn't it the case that leaders of other countries are not normally invited to?
Well,
he broke that this year. So they always invite the British Prime Minister. As somebody points out, they've invited Nigel Farage.
Yes.
They've invited Dan Dukes, who is Nigel Farage's social media officer.
It is without doubt a snub and a deliberate one. And when we're talking about the special relationship, we should be very, very mindful of this.
But I worry about this, Chloe, because here is what has happened with Donald Trump and successive British Prime Ministers. I love this country, but I'm willing to deal with this idiot because I love the country so much, is the Donald Trump view. I mean, Steve Bannon said, and nobody has publicly disagreed with this, Steve Bannon said that when Donald Trump got Theresa May on her own or with a small number of officials, he said, please let me give you a brilliant trade deal. I see it as in America's strategic interest to support you leaving the European Union. And she said, we can't do anything to upset the Europeans. And now he didn't say it quite like this, but he basically said, F the Europeans. What we need to do is get together as the Anglosphere. Yeah. She said no.
Yeah, it's not very good.
So the man stood up and said, I'm going to give you the best trade deal of any country on earth and legalise haggis to celebrate it.
Well, I think we all know clear as day at this point that Theresa May is not a very good negotiator. And we saw that during the Brexit process, so I'm not too surprised with that. But I mean, come on, making David Lammy your foreign secretary, knowing what he has said about Trump in the past. Obviously, when they chose David Lammy, they didn't know for certain whether Donald Trump was going to win or not. But there
they
was
sent
a pretty
100
high
people
chance
to
of it.
help him out.
And then what's the name of the guy they've appointed now to also have talks with the US, who has also said really horrendous things about Trump? It's like,
I love the way you're making me responsible for you not knowing the name.
Peter Mandelson, the new ambassador. Peter Mandelson.
Yes.
Lord Peter Mandelson. And also what's interesting is Mark Burnett, who was the creator of The Apprentice, who basically modelled Donald Trump. If you watch that whole sort of
series, that's why Donald Trump got his...
done that. He got his thing. He's so brilliant at basically scripting what Donald Trump's going to be on an international basis. We should never underestimate what's going to happen on that sort of premise. It's going to be very interesting what happens over the next few months. Starmer was talking this week about putting AI front and centre to make Britain great again.
We're already the third biggest. We're never going to beat America and China.
But what we need to do is make sure we get the proper investment, make sure we encourage people like Elon to come and invest over here.
I'll tell you something.
He told him to not come to the conference. Now he's changed his way against U-turn on everything.
I'll tell you something that the Americans did do. The Americans, presumably the American embassy in the United Kingdom, was behind the news story from a few days ago, which was Lammy plans to sign the Chagos deal 4 days before Trump comes into power. They knew Lammy was going to do it. They leaked it to the press.
Of course.
I'll tell you what, and you can go to my YouTube channel, which is the Andre Walker channel. I talk about how I believe that giving the Chagos Islands effectively giving it to China via Mauritius will cause World War III. It's an incredibly dangerous situation. And Lammy, and I'll tell you the thing that worries me about Lammy, you had Lammy at the UN talking about Ukraine and linking it to the transatlantic slave trade. Yeah. There are many things you can say about Vladimir Putin, but the transatlantic slave trade has nothing to do with it.
And it's so right.
Completely nuts. He is completely driven by ideology and
stupidity.
The Chagos deal has given us a taste of what we're in for with this man. He's saying, "Oh, we're giving away the Chagos Islands so that we can decolonise." It's not like Mauritius are they're not the natives. it's not decolonising. He just lives in this delusion.
I'll tell you what is a remarkable detail about the Chagos Islands deal. First of all, an independent Mauritius has never ruled it. It only became interested when it became a vassal state to China. But here's the remarkable bit. The Chagosians, or whatever they're called, are against the deal because they say, why are we being given to Mauritius? We have no connection with the place.
No, exactly, and we need to keep shining the spotlight on it. And going back to the language about David Lammy and the terrible things he said about Trump.
He's a fat moron.
Well, but you also work on the principle that sometimes Trump forgives. J.D. Vance in 2016 called Trump the American Hitler. He then became his running mate, so he does...
maybe thought that was hope for Lammy yet, then.
Well, there may be, but actually... the feeling on the road is that it's not going to happen on that sort of basis. We need to get the special relationship. We need somebody to bridge that gap. Nigel has upset Elon because of Tommy Robinson, effectively, and say, look, he's not going to say he's a political prisoner and not going to have him in reform and so on and so forth.
Part of the problem you've got. And funnily enough, I've been talking to a lot of people in reform. I think one of the big problems you've got is a lot of people in America don't understand the sensitivity of having someone who has serious criminal convictions involved in your political party. The reality is, the fact that Tommy Robinson is in prison is not Farag's objection to him. Yeah. That's the reality.
Wasn't Mandelson had a dodgy mortgage application, didn't he?
There's all sorts of people. But actually, and we've both been posting about this on the Ad Reborn show on YouTube as well.
Go for it.
But the reality is this, is that Tommy Robinson's supporters will come out and say, he's never asked to join Reform.
Yeah, that's a reasonable point.
Come on. So you turn around. He doesn't want to join Reform, so leave him alone.
That reminds me, do you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of when the House of Commons authorities were so angry with John Bercow for refusing to go to the investigation or the hearing on his bullying allegations, that they publicly announced he was banned from having a parliamentary pass. And he, the usual Bercow thing. I neither requested. What do you know? He always said. What did he say? I neither requested nor required it.
Exactly, and that's the principle. So we need to look at that sort of stuff. They fell out over that, and the reports of 100 million donation, that was never confirmed. But the whole report of that, all of a sudden they're saying he's not fit to be the leader. It was as a result of people saying basically Tommy Robinson, political prisoners.
Look at the spin of the Guardian, though. Urgent review to be held into grooming gangs. I mean, what on earth are they saying? Their spin is that Keir Starmer has acquiesced to a review.
Well, they would do, wouldn't they? And also, this is talking about Parliament. Russian diplomats in Lord security breach. Russian diplomats accessed a private area of Parliament in a major security breach just before Christmas that has alarmed security officials. The small group of diplomats joined a public tour of the Houses of Parliament and then broke off to enter a part of the House of Lords that was out of bounds before they were found out by security.
But you do wonder when you're talking about security, how this gets on the front page of The Guardian. So that must have been leaked by somebody in security who said this is what happened.
Do you know something? I remember when I worked in Parliament, there's a brilliant tour of Big Ben. And you can go on it for free if you speak to your member of Parliament. I'm not joking.
Has to be a fit member.
But yeah, that's right. You have to run up the stairs. But there was a chap who got in touch with me when I worked for the MP for Morecambe, who said, I'd like to come on the Big Ben tour, but he also had an address in Tehran, right? So, his letter had his two addresses, one in Morecambe and one in Tehran. And I phoned up security and I said to them, and maybe this story's been proved wrong. I said, well, what should we do about this? Because we'd approve it. I mean, it's not for us. Say no. They said, don't you worry. We've got security all over the place. Anyone on the tour is being monitored. Well, it turns out that's not true, isn't it?
Once you're in Parliament, you can go. I once went on a tour and they took me down and all the other people down the back bench of the House of Commons. I was a bit tired, so I sat down on the back bench and someone went, Sir, you can't sit on that. And I'll tell you what, the seats in the House of Commons are like a 1950s car. They've got the big springs sticking in.
They're very good.
No, they're horrific. They're really uncomfortable.
No, I had in my office. I had one of the nice like green House of Commons chairs with the logo on, and clearly their security.
You've stolen that. Yeah.
No, I didn't. No, my friend stole it,
oh, really?
And clearly their security. No, clearly their security is not very good because he just picked it up and walked out with confidence, and they didn't stop him.
That always does it.
I'll tell you what I saw once. Do you know how Norman Shaw North in the House of Commons is incredibly hot in the summer? Right, so anyway, a load of MPs got air conditioning units, but they thought they only had to rent them for 1 month. They had them on 5-year deals. I'll tell you what I saw. I saw the bailiffs turn up at Derby Gate, and can I tell you, the bailiffs, they were cocky, and obviously they'd gone, don't you worry, we'll get in here with the warrant. I'll tell you what, the police drew the guns and had them on the floor within seconds.
That's good,
That's how to deal with bailiffs.
Yes.
or get them to lift your mate's car.
Anyway, 03444499. Well, look, there's Mike Graham. He's still having his bran flakes. But we'll be back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. This is the pay-per review with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and our guest co-hosts, who are Andrew Eborn and Chloe Dobbs. Welcome.
Right. The Daily Star, who are Daily Star, and Keno goes in studs up on Rod Stewart. I think that's probably a football thing, nothing else to worry about. And YMCA will save the world.
It's true.
Apparently the Village People are going to perform at the Donald Trump's inauguration, although they're all dead, the originals. Or very old, so it won't be any of the originals. But you know, apparently that's going to heal the world. Of course.
Well, so what happens? The song it used to be played out, and you get Donald doing his wonderful dance.
YMCA.
Like that's what they do.
I prefer in the Navy. To be honest.
In the Navy was wonderful, wasn't it? Good. We grew up on all that sort of stuff.
We used to do it in primary school. Every single morning we had to dance to it.
Why?
We had wake up, shake up in the morning to get us moving and get us healthy.
They played YMCA every morning.
Yeah, we had to dance to YMCA.
What's happened to schools?
And go YMCA.
Oh. Which school was that? What was the name of the school?
Just do that again. What we'll do is we'll clip that for social media.
And tributes to tragic Paul. That's Paul Danan. I don't know why. Yeah, and vaping. Apparently, I don't believe it, but maybe it's from I vape a lot, and loads of people vape a lot.
No, I am 100% with them on this. I didn't. Andrew will tell you about this thing that he told me
coughed
about.
once.
But no, I didn't cough. I took a drag of this vape thing, and it wasn't excessive. Yes. And I'll tell you, I was doubled up in agony.
Yeah, but you're not used to it. If it's like if you smoke one drag, it'll make you cough your guts out.
I will tell you something. What happened was, it's the liquid expanded in my.
Well, this is the problem. There's something called. I we need to look into that. Not a medical professional, but something called popcorn lung.
Right. Yeah, that's the fake news. That doesn't actually exist.
Well, this is what people need to look at. So it is. First of all, it's tragic that he got the death. I'm sure they will look further into it. I saw a good friend, Hayley Palmer, who was very close to him, spoke to him very recently. They're devastated. The guy's in his 40s.
He used to come on tour quite a lot on Sam's show.
Can I tell you? I smoked, right? I used to pull the filters off Marlboro Reds and smoke them the wrong way round,
right?
Because I didn't like filtered cigarettes.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, now different people are different, but the vape had me doubled up in pain, and I tried it again a few other times, and on every occasion.
Yeah, but you got to get used to it. You can't just vape and you'll be all right.
So what we need to do?
That can't be good.
What we need to do until the official report is out is it's pointless speculating because there's a whole industry this, and you don't want to be sued by the industry. But if there is an issue with vapes, then that needs to be looked at.
You can't
properly.
defame a whole industry, though.
Well, the thing is,
you'll be surprised.
because vapes are brand,
I would be surprised.
Vapes are a brand new invention. We do not have the long-term studies. We're not going to find out in 50 years how much these horrible things kill people.
I would suggest, Chloe, here's the problem, and it's precisely what you're saying. I'm not defaming anyone because I'm not going to say that people are knowingly selling a product that they believe it's incredibly safe. It wasn't safe for me. It really wasn't.
Millions of people are doing it and have given up smoking because of it.
What we need to do...
The thing is, the data that we have, I can't remember the exact figures, but it shows that there's actually there's barely a difference in the chances of success quitting smoking, vaping versus just going cold turkey.
Well,
may have worked with you, but
I mean, the problem is I didn't even want to give up smoking, so I didn't do it. I just started doing it.
Scientifically, you shouldn't just use one anecdote.
To be fair, then what we need to do is look at that, get some scientific evidence, so we'll turn on and say this is the cause. We don't know yet. The focus at the moment is it's a tragic loss. This is what's happened. The reasons for his death will no doubt become apparent, and then the questions can be answered in the spotlight again.
Even putting him to one side, and I take your point. I think there is a debate, isn't there? There's effectively the Asher Gould point, which is, look, this is reducing smoking. There's no doubt that smoking's going down, but also, if you're right, Chloe, and I don't know whether you are, then the reality is what we're now moving people onto is a technology which is safer, but clearly not as good as doing...
It's an experimental drug. The same people who are like, I definitely wouldn't touch a COVID vaccine because it's not been tested properly, they're on their vape every single day, which is just another experimental drug.
The smoke machines in clubs are the same stuff as the vapes.
Yes.
So we need
to look at and the abhorrent thing is when they started deliberately appealing to kids and things like that with bubblegum flavours and all these other bits and pieces, brightly coloured stuff.
That's not for kids, though.
No, that's what
I like all the different flavours.
When I was growing up, we used to have those little candy cigarettes.
I remember those.
And do you remember? And there was coconut pretend tobacco. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And that's what got you into the real thing, isn't it? We loved it.
And the whole industry there. You used to have smoking all over the place, and that was what you used to do.
I went out for a fag with Paul Denan outside here about 5 years ago, and he went up to this guy who we got chatting to, who was an actuary at Lloyd's of London, and he went, "Hey mate, have you got a light, mate?" And he went, "I have, and don't call me mate." Anyway, that's
all right. I'll call you.
Rampage of the werewolves. Last story in the Star. There's werewolves that don't go out, especially in the moors at night during a full moon.
Sounds like reliable news.
The Daily Mirror, haunting tragedy of Hollyoaks, Paul, and he was massive. He told me an amazing story once. You know when he won that? Is it Love Island or The Jungle? Tony Soprano. What's his name? They asked him, Warner, to take Tony Soprano out.
Right.
And they went to Soho House, and I can't really say what happened, but basically they went in a toilet, and Paul Gandolfini said, "Get out," pushed everyone out, and then pulled out. I can't really say the rest of it. He had a big knife on him. But anyway, it's the first series of Love Island. He was on the Jungle thing as well.
I think we get where that story's going, don't we?
Yeah.
Was it like comic relief? Celebrities walking around with smiles on their face and big red noses.
I think interesting time. No, but really tragic. And I think everybody's going to have their story. The fact that actually we're losing so many people so young at the moment. I mentioned Tony Slattery earlier. Yep. He was 65. Okay, so another 20 years on Paul. They're youngsters.
Well, that was addiction to cocaine and ketamine.
Whatever it is, these are human lives, and I think there are people and family and friends who will turn around and be devastated by this news.
A lot of people were devastated about him. You know, he was a brilliant man in his day.
And I always say in 2025, that's what we're going to try and do: build those bridges, because tomorrow the people you've just fallen out with may not be here.
Oh, come on, you delivered that without even reading your notes, right? That is the biggest piece of rhetoric I've ever heard in my life.
Right, the Daily Mirror serious story there. Eliane's life mattered, her legacy will live on. This was a 15-year-old girl who was stabbed. The family of murdered Eliane and Andam have vowed to honour her memory by fighting knife crime. But parents Michael and Dorcas said they are crippled with pain over the loss of their kind, loving girl, 15, after Hassan Sentamu, 18, was convicted of her murder. Eliane's life mattered. Her legacy will live in our hearts.
How many tragic stories like this are we going to have before Sadiq Khan starts taking this seriously?
He doesn't care.
He
will never take action.
How can any human being with an ounce of heart look at stories like this and just think, I'm the mayor of London, but I'm not going to bother doing anything about it?
Sadiq Khan's view, as far as I can see, is that knife crime is the price you have to pay for community cohesion with the police.
And people are scared, aren't they? You see horrendous... The good thing about social media and so on and so forth, there is some good in that, is that people are now the media. They are reporting things, they're doing action now, they're doing videos showing what's happening on our streets in London and the appalling situation. It needs to be called out and it needs to be stopped, and the police need to basically crack down on it. It is tragic. Yet another young life lost as a result of it.
Sadiq Khan, I saw today yesterday at the Mayor's Chamber, what a Reform representative got up and said, we need to all of us work together, form an all-party sort of inquiry. Would you be prepared to work with us? And Sadiq Khan said, oh no, we wouldn't work with Reform. So it doesn't care about the kids' lives. It's all political crap. Anyway, we've got to take a little break. Mike Graham's coming up after us, and we'll be back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is the paper
Is that
review.
another Gauld?
This is the paper review with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and indeed Andrew Eborn, the barrister and futurist, and Chloe Dobbs, who is a political commentator. Well, I don't know if we're going to call this good news, Asher, but the front page of the Sun.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about whether there's a prospect of this earlier. The Sun, the latest edition, Mizen's mum's outrage, lock him up again. And because we were talking about, he's on a licence, obviously.
Let's just explain who this is.
Well, this is the guy that...
This is the rapper 10, who is, in fact, the murderer of Jimmy Mizzen. He stabbed the 16-year-old to death and has received a life sentence. He's now out on licence.
After about 14 years.
And whilst being out on licence, he's been rapping about... killing people with a knife.
A rapper unmasked by the Sun as the murderer of Jimmy Mizzen faces a return to jail after apparently breaching his licence. John Fitori, 35, spat out vile tracks glorifying violence on drill artist 10, and the BBC promoted him, refused to apologise yesterday as the PM intervened. But we were talking about this earlier. You're out on licence if you get life in prison, even when you get out. So, and could you be recalled? And it's looked like some things
exactly.
Are going
we
ahead.
raised this point, and what I love is that our viewers and watchers and listeners around the world are responding. We've had something from Andrew in Salisbury, who said, "Great show tonight." Andrew, even whoever he is, was spot on about the rap music scene. BBC is not to blame, but the rap scene has had its own blasphemy law for decades. And this is the point that we were making, is if you look at the language of some of these songs and you dissect it, it is appalling. What we need to look at is put that into perspective and say, look, what are we doing on that sort of basis? What's happening to our society that we permit this, and people are listening to it and responding?
But I remember, Chloe, there was the rap band SMS, who literally were rapping about how they hoped Osama bin Laden would kill British people. I mean, Andrew's right. There are extreme examples, but your average rap song is pretty violent. Also, Andrew earlier listed some of the people that have been convicted of serious criminality. But, you know, this man, and it's got it all. How is this man dealing with a probation officer who says, oh, I'll tell you what, I think what you really should be is appearing on the BBC rapping about killing someone with a knife?
I mean, this is just absolutely ludicrous, and I can't believe that we've seen there that the BBC are refusing to apologise for this. You know, at least
they won't play "Freezing This Christmas."
I know
but they will play.
"Freezing This Christmas" is apparently too controversial because it criticises Starmer, but apparently glorifying the murder of a young boy is acceptable to the BBC. They've got no issue with the kind of words that are used in rap songs, but they get all sensitive about the words you use when you're talking about Hamas, a terrorist organisation.
For those watching, we can see him, and this is yesterday's Sun. It's not the front page, but you know, he's sat on a yellow Lamborghini with a balaclava on. This is from his rap music video. You know, this guy is at best somebody who's not been rehabilitated at all in prison. He should not be walking the street.
And there was a case. I can't remember the lady's name, but she was. She was put in prison for sharing a friend had died, and she shared on Facebook the lyrics of their favourite rap song, and she got done and put in prison for the lyrics of that rap song.
Because the N-word was in it, but it was just...
rather than the person that actually wrote the song. And I think they're not being given any accountability, these rappers, for the lyrics that they're using.
No, and they should. And as I say, there's the general point about that sort of stuff. For the interest of balance, we should say what the BBC said. What the BBC said to Mail Online: the song lyrics you've put to us have not been played on the BBC. Decisions on music are made on a case-by-case basis, and we have strict editorial guidelines in place before any content is broadcast or posted. BBC One Extra does not glamorise violence, and this individual does not feature on any playlist.
But the whole of rap does. I mean, since Ice-T and NWA, Cop Killer and all
language.
That, it's always been glamorising and glorifying violence and killing people.
Just as Andrew in Salisbury said, are they with us that we need to look at this in terms of playing this sort of music, these sort of lyrics to our youngsters who are impressionable?
But can you ban art? Can you ban art?
But hang on a second. I think we've missed a fundamental point here, which is, right, if somebody has committed, I don't know, shoplifting, and they had to be out on licence, I appreciate that that's not the way it really works, and they literally started rapping about how much they love shoplifting and plan to do it in the future, then you would say that person remains a risk of shoplifting. This man, first of all, is not a dreamer. This man has murdered a 16-year-old and has been convicted. There's no doubt about that. If he is rapping about the fact that he loves knife crime, that he's pleased to have killed someone, and that essentially the pleasure of killing him features in the lyrics. I would say to you that that man is going to commit a crime again, and that crime is murder.
And it's insightful as well.
It's very simple. If it's a breach of the licence terms, then you go back inside. That happens with everybody, but we need clarity. And also what needs to happen is we must act very, very quickly on this.
Thank you so much. Well, to those of you listening on Friday morning, Mike Graham is just up in a couple of moments. Thank you so much for listening to this broadcast from Andre and Asha. And 0344
good morning.
499 1000 is the number to call. And so I guess we'll wish you good morning and hand you over to Mike Graham. For those of you watching on and listening on Thursday night, we're going to be taking your calls in a couple of moments. Are you staying? You're not staying with us, are you?
I turned into a pumpkin at midnight, but I love the calls, so I'm going to rush home and listen to them.
Oh, OK. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Chloe, you're going to go as well, aren't you?
I'm going to go as
You've
well.
got your new show coming up, though. Remind us about that Channel 4, the documentary.
Channel 4, yes. We haven't got the official release date. It's called Go Back to Where You Came From. Very
and she went to Syria,
title.
Mogadishu, and it's all about life there. And you nearly got bombed, not by the Turks.
That is the best mistake ever.
Actually, it's both.
Leave it in. Leave it in. Leave it in. Oh my God, that is one for the real.
No, but they both nearly happened.
There's no military age men. Don't worry. It was never a real risk. They're all here. Don't worry about it. My God,
My Freudian slip.
Asha has broken the network, ladies and gentlemen. We will just recover and be back in a moment.
Right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, it's Ash and Andre. It's just about your calls now. 0344 499 1000. You can send us a WhatsApp voice message if you're scared and, you know, just want to leave a quick message. That's on WhatsApp, just voice messages. And let's start, of course, on a great day. Hallelujah, it's Ken in London. Welcome, Ken.
Hallelujah. God bless every one of you tonight.
Thank you.
You and Andre, Ash.
You're in a good mood tonight so far.
I would like to talk about a very important subject right now, the fires, the inferno in Los
LA.
Angeles.
What do you want to say about it?
Is it related to Jesus?
For me, as a Christian, this is a clear manifestation of God's righteous anger, his wrath.
But it could be just homeless people making fires in the woods there and them not clearing up all the brambles and twigs, which is what it seems to be. But, you know, a lot of people are saying it's the new Sodom and Gomorrah punishment. So is that your point?
Yes, that's the point I'm making, Ash. This is a genuine thing, you know. When you check out the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, we see the manifestation of God's anger against especially sexual pornography, sexual sin. There's no pornography mentioned in the Bible, but sexual sin, homosexuality, lesbianism, adultery, fornication. God is angry at these things.
Well, they named sodomy after Sodom, didn't they?
God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, totally destroyed it, the Dead Sea area. Now, when you there's something amazing happened.
But Ken, we've had these sorts of natural disasters before, and people have got into trouble or got into arguments. You wouldn't get into trouble with me, but for suggesting that it's the wrath of God. You know, why is this one? Why is this one a signal that the end of the world is nigh? When, say, you know, I don't know, a fire that happened 20 years ago isn't.
Well, there's 2 days before this happened, there was an award ceremony in Los Angeles. I think it was possibly called, what was it called?
Yeah, it was before the Oscars, yeah. They might cancel the Oscars, apparently, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, that would be an act of God, I'll tell you.
2 days before it, Andre and Ash, 2 days before it, I watched it in the mobile phone, a video.
Oh, you watch those sort of, you love award ceremonies, do you?
No, I don't watch it. I was watching it because it was connected to the Bible. The lady compere, the lady host, was openly mocking God. And she get big applause from all this guests, all these film stars, all these wealthy people laughing, mocking God openly.
By the way, I mean, let's just remind ourselves of the Paris Olympics. You know, we would mock the Last Supper. We're not going to mock the actions of Muhammad. Now, as it happens, I don't want us to mock the actions of Muhammad, but it's amazing the way that we are so willing to kick in the Christians, but we would not be disrespectful to Buddhism in that way, would we?
Of course not. Because the reason is because Christians, we don't get violent toward people. We forgive them. That's why they think we're an easy touch. But listen, God is our protector. God is the one who's watching this. And I would just like to tell you something which, for example, this fire which is happening is nothing to what is coming. Let me tell you what's coming. This is in Revelation chapter 8. Read it tonight, Revelation 8. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees were burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. During the coming tribulation, 1/3 of all the trees on earth, 1/3 of all the grass is going to be burned up. There is a judgment of infernal fire coming from God. And I can tell you, every prophecy in the Bible...
Yeah, but why? But Ken, why is it... And I'm not being disrespectful, you know me, but why is it that this fire is the one that indicates that all of this is going to happen now? Because, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's like when you said that there was obviously the war in Gaza is a very worrying sign, and I agree with that. But I don't see necessarily why we believe that automatically means that this is the end of the world.
It's confirmation bias, Ken.
This is warning signs. This is a warning.
Yeah, but we've had warning signs.
How do you know it wasn't just homeless people making fires, which apparently they are doing? They're actually eating in the forest, and the twigs haven't been cleaned up because of all the DEI appointments, and there's no water in the thing. It's all because of terrible things all coming together. How can it could be just that, couldn't it?
Well, you can have that idea, but when you check out the Bible, you see God always gives a warning. God always gives us a warning before he brings judgment upon us. The biggest problem in the sin in the world today is mockery of Messiah Jesus. That is the biggest mockery by all religions, the mock Messiah Jesus. God's judgment is coming. But he gives us a warning saying, God always sends a prophet to warn the people, repent or the judgment of God is coming. It's historic. This is historic prophetic truth in the Bible. Right now, the warnings are going out all over the world, and people are mocking the same as they did in the Bible. They mock, say, God can't do anything. But I can tell you, friends, everyone who's listening, if you mock, the Bible says God is not mocked. If you're mocking the Messiah, you need to be careful.
Okay, Ken, I want to thank you, but we've got loads and loads of calls coming through. By the way, just want to remind you about the main subject of our phone-in tonight, and it's this lovely gentleman. Actually, I'm not going to be ironic because I think it's too serious a subject. But what about the murderer of Jimmy Mizzen, who has been let out on licence and has made a successful rap career, including being pictured with a yellow Lamborghini in which he laughs and jokes and talks about how much he enjoyed murdering the 16-year-old schoolboy. OK, we've got Steve in Walsall. Steve, you're on
Near
top.
the Black Country.
Steve, you're on top.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Country of colour, sorry. Yeah.
I just see what you think about this. I've had a bit of problem with the Inland Revenue.
Talk to us. We can solve all those sort of problems, yeah.
Anyway, it's to do with my state pension.
Yeah.
Had this letter come saying you're in arrears for £254. And I thought, well, how can you do this? They deal with the tax on the pension, but what's going on? Anyway, give you a phone number. After half an hour on the phone, it was answered. The first person couldn't help me.
Because he was working from home, watching Neighbours, you know, feeding his dog, probably.
Yeah. Put me on to somebody else.
Again, working from home.
Come out with some rubbish where I couldn't understand. Yeah. And I thought, well, it's all to do with when my wife died 2.5 years ago. She died of cancer 2.5 years ago, and I died with her, to be honest. Anyway, but when you registered the death, they give you a pamphlet, a booklet, and there's all the letters in there, phone numbers and everything to get in touch with when you're bereaved.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of these things was they sort it all out for you. A reduction on my community charge, which it turned out was a disgrace.
25% you get off a single person, don't you?
Well, not now.
Don't you?
You've got to pay for, all the houses were built in Warsaw for all these bald people. Anyway, that's something else. Anyway, what then? Oh, they said you get a percentage of your late wife's pension added to yours, and I thought, well, that won't be too bad, till I ended up with it, and that was a disgrace of pittance. And all this money, what they say I owe, is to do with that. And I said, well, you look after my tax affairs. And I started coming out with all sorts of rubbish. It's not their responsibility.
Well, okay. Can I just say, Steve? I think it's really important that we don't dole out tax advice. My view is go to the Citizens Advice Bureau. But obviously, some people will get to a situation where they're receiving more money. They exceed the tax-free allowance. And it might not be a great deal. I mean, that tax-free allowance, remember, has been badly eroded by inflation. Inflation's gone up 25% in the past 2 years.
And the Labour government, of course, there's been a stagnation on that, so you're actually paying more tax. You know, they don't raise the threshold.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Steve. Colin is in Cheshire. Colin, you're on talk.
Hey there. Just want to talk about accountability,
yes.
Really. It's in terms of, like I say, I've been watching your channel for so long, and it pains me to think that over 14 years, when the new government comes in, and there's always an answer to over the 14 years of what they would do, and then as soon as they come into power, into office, it's almost they go back to school.
Well, they just lied, didn't they, in their manifesto? Said, well, don't worry, the pensioners are going to get the thing, the waspy women will get this, the farmers. And then they just said, right, we're in power now, forget all that.
I know, but my point being is that not illegal?
No.
And
they can do what they want.
No, I'll tell you something, Colin. You are not the first person. Though. You're not the first person to make that point. My own view is this: the House of Lords always says that it will never stand in the way of anything that is a manifesto commitment in the election. I think they ought to stand in the way of things that were specifically ruled out in the manifesto. Labour ruled out loads and loads of stuff.
National insurance going up, and it went up.
But I'll tell you what is the terrifying thing. The terrifying thing about the Labour Party is very simply this. that what they're doing is that they are literally representing the public sector only. So they're sat there saying, we don't care about pensioners, we don't care about the poor. Well, no, actually we do a little bit, but our priority is big fat payouts to public sector fat cats.
Because they're the people that help them, the unions. It's basically payback time.
Go on, Colin.
Again, I understand exactly what you're saying, but in terms of buying votes by lies is not...
well, that's why Reform did a contract rather than a manifesto, although it's not legally binding, but that was their point. And I think you're right. They should bring in some laws that if you haven't...
but if I do something wrong in my business, I'm accountable, aren't I?
Do you want me to give you the technical reason? The technical reason is this, because... you can change any element of the Constitution with a simple majority in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And so if you were to pass a law that prohibits the government from doing anything, they could simply repeal that law. I'll give you a really good example. The Fixed Term Parliaments Act, which Nick Clegg insisted David Cameron passed, set out the circumstances under which you could have a general election early, and it was 2/3 of Parliament vote for it and all this sort of thing. And when the Conservatives were in majority, they simply repealed the law and returned the powers to the Prime Minister. So if there was a law saying that if the Labour government pledged not to do something in the manifesto and then they would then be prohibited from doing it in the future, then what Labour would do is repeal the law.
But what's interesting is the Freedom of Speech Union, when they got this university free speech law that had already been passed in Parliament, and Labour said, no, we're not doing that. They've actually got in trouble because it was passed by the House of Commons. So I suppose technically they could repeal it by a vote, but because they haven't done that...
I'll tell you what Labour did with...
A minister can't overrule the House.
I'll tell you what what Labour government did with the Higher Education (Brackets Free Speech Act 2024. What they said, they have to decide when it's going to be implemented, and they decided that the answer was never, which is what was ruled illegal. What they'll do is now repeal that law. But Colin, I'll tell you what the wider point is that's important. It's the way that we have this, what Lord Hailsham called the elected dictatorship, which is once every 4 or 5 years, we vote for a Prime Minister who can do whatever the hell they want. They control who are their members of Parliament. They can stick as many people as they like in the House of Lords. They've not got the hereditary peerage to stop them. The King is a wet blanket, let's be clear, and won't exercise his powers to prevent laws going through. So in practice, Keir Starmer can do whatever he wants.
Honestly, I think it's, like I say, it's shameful, the fact that just purely in the fact of, which is quite layman's, in terms of how bad it is and how poor it is.
But he doesn't seem to care, does he, Starmer?
It's like shades of grey. There's so many shades of grey, whereas everybody who's like just the normal person is going, well, look, this is what we want, and this is what we're getting.
This is why we haven't got democracy, have we, anymore? It's all a sham. It's smoke and mirrors. We haven't got any democracy, and they're trying to get rid of it more with the council elections, with the freedom of speech. You can't run a democracy without freedom of speech.
But it's very sad. But like I say, I was just saying that they've had 14 years to correct it, and
yeah, they were useless as well.
It's
absolutely. All right, Colin, thank you so much. Well, I have to say one thing, and look, I don't want to indulge in the conspiracy theory, but I went past St Thomas's Hospital tonight where they were setting up a mobile lung disease assessment unit. I don't know if you know, but Wuhan has ordered lockdowns of high schools on the grounds that there is a new disease that is circulating around the city. I don't know if you know that Russia has now started screening entrants from the People's Republic of China for this new type of pneumonia, which is a lung disease. Oops, they've done it again. More next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, so this is the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. Dave is in Southend. Dave, you're on Talk.
Good morning, Mr. Walker. I'd just like to clarify. You know, at the beginning of your show, you was going on about Dresden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say that Dresden shouldn't have happened?
No.
Because, you know, we get this a lot with people about, you know, so that they were like a fireball and whatever. I think we need to clarify who started the war,
yes,
and who they bombed during the war. Warsaw was...
No, I'll tell you the point I was trying to make, Dave, which was this. I was trying to say that we have to be mindful that Gazans are victims of their own terrorist government. Now, what I also said, just to explain, is you've still got to win the war, which is, even though we don't blame every German for the Nazis, we still bombed Dresden. That was.
But they were bombing innocent civilians first, and actually in the First World War Blitz, they actually killed. The first people killed, I think, were a queue people outside a Hastings chip shop. So they were bombing innocent civilians in the First World War. I mean, and if you do that, then obviously that's what war was back then.
No, that is correct. And as I tried to explain, they flattened Malta so there was nothing left of it. Warsaw was completely flattened. Coventry got obliterated, and London suffered 18 months or so of this. And for us, for people, we do hear this a lot about bombing, and everyone.
And Hiroshima, of course, they talk about that as well. Hiroshima.
Yes, sir. But everyone keeps
Nagasaki
going on
as well.
about us doing Dresden. I don't care. I'm glad we did Dresden because it sent a message.
Well, there's a difference. There's a difference, Dave. Let me just pick you up on this, between being in favour of it and not caring. Because I think what I would say to you is that I care very deeply about the people of Gaza. However, I also believe that it is vital that Israel eradicates Hamas for the benefit of those people.
But also the point should be made, Israel haven't done what happened in Dresden, or they could have carpet bombed Gaza and finished it in a couple of days.
I think my point is that whilst there are two categories of people, there are the evil leadership and the ordinary civilians. Unfortunately, in order to get rid of the leadership, some of the civilians will suffer. But I will say one thing. Not even the Germans used Germans as human shields on sites to be bombed. Not even Adolf Hitler thought that was a good idea.
And a lot of the population did support the Nazis. You know, the majority were supporting the Nazis.
No,
they were the government.
Is that you came over as though we shouldn't have done it. But what I'm trying to say is this. I don't care if Israel goes in and obliterates Gaza. In fact, I want them to go in and clean this up.
No. I'll tell you what I will say. Because it's a current thing, I'll tell you what the difference is between Dresden and Gaza. Right. What you have to understand is that Israel has the technological capability to minimise civilians. Now, when you're going,
it has done.
Yeah, when you're going house to house, it's very difficult. If you've got people using hospitals to put weapons in, then that makes it much more difficult for Israel. But
and tunnels.
I think what you can do is you can say we accept there will be civilian casualties, whilst also being committed to reducing the number of civilians. I mean, as Asher has made the point on many occasions, Israel has invested incredibly heavily in trying to minimise civilian casualties, but they're up against a foe who uses children as civilian shields.
But still, the ratio is one innocent civilian to one terrorist, which is unheard of, and it's why armies, you know, Colonel Richard Kemp confirmed this, are studying how Israel have been so successful in minimalising the amount of innocent civilians killed, or civilians.
Mr. Gould, I fully support the IDF, what they're doing, all right? This has come to a point now. We can go back to the three TWA planes where Yasser Arafat blew them up, if you remember that. I'm old enough to know that.
They didn't have people in, did they? That was on the ground, wasn't it? Was that the
No, there was people on.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes, there was. And then the Americans and everyone else turned Yasser Arafat into a statesman.
True.
And he made hundreds of millions, and his wife lives on the 5th floor of a very posh hotel in France currently.
My point is this, the point is this, the IDF have now got a chance to finish Hamas off and finish all this off and end this once and for all. Yeah. And that's what should happen.
Okay, Dave, can I just ask you this question? Because I think it's an interesting point. And I think that you misunderstood me. Perhaps I slightly misunderstood you. But I think that you found some kindred spirits with Asher and I, simply because the thing that we're most worried about when we chat privately is that Israel and Gaza have gone through so much pain now. For this to be a half-baked job that has to be redone in 3 years or 6 years' time is crazy. One thing that worries me is this story about this Sinwar guy who Israel release him from in a prisoner swap, having given him
one prisoner for I think 1,000 or 3,000 terrorists, and he was one of them.
Having given him apparently brain surgery on the Israeli taxpayers' expense, he then runs the operation. Do you know what? I'm going to say something that's more brutal to the Israeli civilians than it is to Hamas. I would say that if I was Israeli Prime Minister, it would be my greatest wish to not negotiate with Hamas and have no prisoner release. And I would like to be strong enough, though it's very difficult to do it, to say we will try and free the hostages, but we are not going to do a prisoner release.
But don't you think the best way is do this deal, release the hostages, and if Hamas can do attacks again, just start the war again? I think that's what they're thinking is.
But there's been so much heartache, though, hasn't there, with all of this? I mean, Gaza is in pieces on the floor right now. I'm not saying that was the wrong thing to do. I think it was the right thing to do. But we've got to do this once and never again.
Yeah, but it will happen again. They've promised to do it again.
I'm sorry. I'm old enough to know about what goes on throughout all the years with this Gaza Palestinian. We've had this for so many decades. It's getting tiresome. The fact is, the Americans are pretty hypocritical here. When the tower came down, they were prepared to go into any country whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true.
To level it out. But why is it that Israel has to be appeasement to terrorists? Why is it they have to say no? You mustn't do this. America, keep your nose out and let the IDF do the job.
Well, Trump seems to be more on side, doesn't he? That's the thing. It's Biden, isn't it? I mean, he was giving billions to Iran.
The Americans are goddamn hypocrites, because would they give 200 of their prisoners for one of their own people? No, they would not. And the Israelis should say, no, we're going in and we're going to take them back. And as you're quite right, if we
but the Israeli, but to be fair, Dave, I mean, I was in Israel. I'm not Jewish and I'm not an Israeli, but I was in Israel. There is a lot of pressure on the Israeli government to do everything they can to get the hostages. Funnily enough, I was with the Speaker of the Parliament as part of this trip. Obviously, I don't know him, but I said to him, you know, you continually going on about all these hostages. Can you tell, and presumably you're not going to give me any confidential information or classified information, but do you have credible reason to believe that the hostages are alive? And he said, yes, they were holding them. And at the end of it, and I'm going to argue against my own point, there is a point at which Israel has to say, we can't free the hostages through military means, so we're going to have to either release terrorists or let them die. Now, personally, I really think they should let them die, even though that's an awful thing to say, because freeing 300 terrorists is so dangerous for Israel that I think it's unthinkable.
But the thing is, in Israel, it's a very small country. Everyone knows everyone. There'll be people who know these hostages, and they do really care about. That's why they'll even swap a dead body. They'll accept a dead body to give them living, dangerous terrorists in Israel. But it's such a small country that people know those... The small babies that were taken, you know, the ginger-haired kids. I mean, that they actually know these people and their family or friends.
Dave, just let me ask you before we sign off, what would you do if you were the Israeli Prime Minister?
I would go in and wipe the floor. What I would have done...
A Dresden? Would you have done a Dresden?
I would have done a Dresden on them. I would have flattened it till there's nothing left of them and finished this.
Yeah, but that is a genocide.
Well, you can call it whatever you like. We have got to stop this. If we give in to this again, they would do it again.
Yeah, but a carpet bombing of that type kills every man, woman, and child in Gaza.
Not necessarily carpet bombing. I'm saying send IDF in there to deal.
Well, no. To be fair, they have done that. But when you're going door to door, street to street, you can't free every hostage.
But why are innocent people there? Because Egypt won't accept them. They won't. They use them as shields. You know, in the war, we sent all the children away. They're not doing that. They're actually bringing them in.
Oh, and before we go to the break, let me just make one final point. Thank you so much, Dave, in Southend. You know, the underground network in Gaza is bigger than the London Underground. There are enough bunkers for all of the civilians in Gaza to get underground. They're not allowed in there. They're reserved solely for Hamas fighters.
And hostages.
And where are the entrances of the tunnels, in hospitals, in schools,
everywhere,
in apartment blocks, in order to encourage the Israeli Defence Force to attack hospitals? Morally bankrupt. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, this is the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. And Asher, you've been in radio and television quite a long time, haven't you?
30 years.
30 years or so. Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
When is the anniversary, do we think?
October will be 30, actually.
Right.
30 years.
So, Asher, as the ultimate professional, having spent 30 years, earlier was talking to Chloe Dobbs, who has recently been to Syria. Let's replay what took place. You're going to go as well, aren't you?
I'm going to go as well.
You've got your new show coming up, though. Tell her, remind us about that Channel 4, the documentary. What's it?
Channel 4, yes. We haven't got the official release date. It's called Go Back to Where You Came From. Very
and she went to Syria, Mogadishu, and it's all about life there. And you nearly got bombed, not by the Turks.
That is the best mistake ever.
Actually, it's both.
Leave it in. Oh, my God. That is...
She came that close.
To getting bombed by the Turks. Yeah. I mean, that is just crazy, isn't it? Just unbelievable.
By the way, the mayoress of Warsaw was killed by a bomb dropped from a Zeppelin in Warsaw. That's from Chalky.
In World War One.
I'll actually know that. There's some holes in the brick walls about 32 Bradford Street and just on the outskirts of central Warsaw. And there's a plaque that says the lady mayoress was killed. A bomb hit a tram and it killed her over a few days. So that was
Let's not talk about any more bombing.
The Blitz in the First World War.
Because we just don't.
There's too many Freudian slips.
There'll be no bombing on this show. No. Let me tell you, no bombing at all. Okay,
so the other, though.
Let's go to Mark in London. Mark, you're on Talk.
Hello, Andre.
All right, Mark. Mate. How are you? You all right? We're all right. Yeah, we're all right.
Yeah, brilliant. What I'd like to know is the government are asking for corridor nurses in hospitals.
Yeah, they're putting people in corridors now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. People are dying, apparently not being noticed for hours.
Well, I'm not surprised. How many hospitals have been built in the last 10
Well, the NHS
years?
is great, isn't it? It's revered around the world, is it? But I mean, you look at this. I was listening to Kev's show earlier, and 260 people came one day, and that will cost us about £15 million a year just for that. And sometimes we get 1,000 a day. Now that would sort out a hospital for 40 million quid, a day's worth of people coming in on boats.
So just explain that statistic. So that's
£40,000 it costs for the accommodation for a year per migrant. So you work it out, 260. Well, it's about.
Well, okay, let's do it right now.
£14 million. Plus they got the legal fees and all that. I mean, they're on about 50 grand costs. So you'd have to earn 70 grand. So it's about 3 or 4 times the national wage. But you know, we could sort all our hospitals and all our schools out. But no, we're sorting everyone else out.
Do you know what? That's a depressing thought. You're saying. I mean, the exact figure people will debate. Yeah. But you're talking about just the accommodation at 40 grand. 260 people arrived yesterday on migrant boats, and so across their lifetime, we will pay 10.
No, a year. That is. That's a year.
Oh my God.
That's 1 year. It's
so
every
year. Every single day. We incur an additional housing cost of 10.4 million a year.
Well, if 1,000 come, it's 4 times that. Sometimes we get 1,000.
Let's multiply that by 365. That's 3.7 billion pounds.
It's 10.4 million pounds a year for that boat. So if 1,000 come, it's 40 million just for 1 day of boat. That's 40. Imagine what we could sort our hospitals. We could have total luxury, and the schools could be sorted out. But no, we're spending it all around the world on other people and people coming in.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, how many hospitals have been built in the UK in the last 10?
Well, Boris said he was going to build a few, but then it was all a bit, you know.
We can't afford it. We spent all the money on COVID furlough and migrants.
Exactly.
And green issues around the world.
And I'll tell you something, Mark. When I sit down and look at my tax bill, and I imagine you do the same, I do not think, well, that COVID lockdown was money well spent.
Well, unfortunately, I don't pay a tax because I've got a thing called borderline personality disorder. No, I'm not a criminal.
But that doesn't get you off tax, having borderline personality disorder, or does it?
No, I'm not allowed to work anymore.
Oh, right, OK.
I won't go into details, but what I'm
You still get taxed, though. You still get taxed when you buy stuff from a shop and you get...
Yeah, VAT.
You're still going to get taxed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You get taxed on everything, toilet paper and everything.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at, right, the hospitals, there's been no more hospitals built. But those hospitals were to help how many people that was in the UK.
Well, yeah.
So how
40, 50 million,
in the UK now.
Well, they say 75, but it's probably more like 80, 85, because there's a lot of illegal people here who aren't registered.
Well, the thing is, all these people that are coming in illegally in that, over the last 10 years is... I'd hate to think
people fly over here just to use the NHS. People from the States come here because they can't, and they'll just get accepted. They don't even check who you are.
People flying over to use the British NHS. I mean, how bad must it be if the NHS was the best option? I mean, how bad?
You get pregnant women, you know, from all around the world. They go, "Oh, let's go to Britain." Because
by the way, can I tell you what a lot of people do? And this is one of the big kick-offs in France, where they have an excellent health service. People getting on the Eurostar and presenting themselves with a cough at a French hospital and having lung cancer and trying to get cancer treatment, because the cancer survival rates in France absolutely destroy us.
Well, most of the world does.
Yeah,
that's true. Most of the world does destroy us. I mean,
about 10,000 people I read die at A&E before they get seen a year. And that's not surprising when they're having to wait outside in ambulances. There's one story of an old guy. He fell over, broke his leg. He's waiting in an ambulance in a queue outside. 8 hours later, they go, "Oh, he's got sepsis now, so we can't operate because he's too old. So we've just got to make him comfortable, and he's got to die comfortably." And that's just because of an 8-hour queue, and that's happening, being replicated across the country.
Yeah, the thing is, the NHS was renowned all over the world. Like, the NHS is fantastic.
Sacred cow.
But look at it now.
Oh, it's a dump.
But we're all banging our pans for it, you know what I mean? It's still got that sort of, we can't touch the NHS.
Yeah, and this government, well, this so-called government that was originally put there for the working man, and that just seems to be more for the...
Can I give you a fact?
To pay for his ass.
Can I give you a fact? the vast majority of Labour, the vast majority of the Labour leadership, I think ordinary Labour members are different, hate the working man. What they love is public sector workers. That is the public sector party. It's like the Soviet Communist Party, not because they're communists, but because it's all about the public sector. Venerate the public sector. Bang your pans for the public sector. Thank the public sector. Give them all medals for doing what they do. Put their pay up as much as possible. The working man, he can sod off.
But the private sector, they don't get it, or if they do, they're stupid. They're the ones that they make the tax from to pay the public sector.
But if you remember, Andre, when Labour was sort of invented, it was invented for the working man and the poor.
It was.
Exactly. They've turned their back on the working man.
I would change the name of it from Labour to Claimer.
Yeah, you like that one.
All right, Mark, thank you very much.
Cheers, Mark.
Dave is in Portsmouth. Dave, you're on talk.
All right, Dave. Dave?
Come on, Dave.
Dave.
Come on, Dave.
How you doing, guys?
We're all right, man. How are you, Dave?
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
We're all right. We're all good, man. What do you want to talk about?
About your rapper.
Yes.
The rapper, yeah, who's the BBC are sort of promoting the murderer rapper. Go on, Dave.
That's the one. I heard earlier that the BBC actually edited some of those lyrics before going out on air, so they must have known the context.
Well, what they've said. What they've said in their defence was that the specific lyrics, which I will read to you now, were not on the songs that the BBC promoted. But just to be clear, for those of you who just tuned in, the guy who killed Jimmy Mizzen, who stabbed the 16-year-old schoolboy, has been released from prison, and he is now a successful rap star called 10. And in his songs, he says the following. Now, bear in mind, he stabbed Jimmy Mizzen to death. Sharpen up my blade, I've got to keep those necessary. Stay alert and kept it ready. Any corner could be deadly. Judge took a look at me before the trial even started. He already knows he's going to throw the book at me. See a man's soul fly from his eyes and his breath gone. Seeing blood spilled the same floor he was left on.
What a lovely guy.
That is a rap about killing a 16-year-old schoolboy.
But the BBC have form on this. Remember Dirty Den, Leslie Grantham? He murdered a cab driver in Hungary when he was younger, yet he became a star on EastEnders. Convicted murderer. Dave?
Yep.
Dave?
Getting back to the music, guys, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Getting back to the
music, yeah.
That's not rap. It's just.
Well, it's called drill, but rap's always been bad. You look at Biggie and Tupac. They've always, Cop Killer, NWA, and all the bands. It's always been about murdering and the glorification of killing each other, competitors. And in London, these gangs are actually bragging they're stabbing someone to death, and then they're saying raps about it. And this is like an incitement, because obviously the next gang has to do this, and this is how it. So it is actual literal incitement. Dave?
Yep. Well, my advice is to any young person out there, black, white, Asian, Muslim, whatever. There's some better black music to listen to.
Yeah, would you remember when rap music wasn't about killing people? There were some bands, with a Tribe Called Quest and all that. Disco, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There was some good stuff.
Well, I'm probably a bit older than you. Tribe Called Quest, but you can take black music back to years and years ago. And
well, rap goes back to sort of the 80s, doesn't it? The 80s. I mean, Run DMC, they never did any violent stuff. It was just cool, wasn't it? It was just good stuff.
No. You look at...
Run DMC. Although he did get murdered, the guy in Run DMC. He got shot.
1982.
Yeah. The sugar, what they call the Sugar Hill Gang.
There's some sort of delay here, because every time you reply to Dave, he starts...
Dave?
I'm getting confused.
Are you watching your telly, Dave?
The problem is... No,
the problem is every time...
I'm watching, but
you see, you got your mic...
I'm a few minutes behind.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has become quite confusing for me. Thank you so much, Dave, in Portsmouth. The problem is... Yeah, it got a bit confusing, but anyway. Okay, But he makes a fair point, doesn't he? That this rap is all about violence and death, and it's a major problem. We'll be back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and this is the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. Just to say to you that James Whale is off ill again tomorrow. Once again, I keep saying this because we know we get billions of emails and letters in from people very worried. He's just got a cold. He's just got the flu. That's it. But obviously, because he's got late-stage cancer, it takes him a bit longer to get over it. But he is ill with the flu. Okay, Ali is in. Oh, Ali's in West Yorkshire. I think you phoned before.
All right,
and we thought you were a brilliant caller.
Yeah, guys, how you doing?
Fantastic. So, Ali, last time we spoke, you were extremely concerned about the fact that people on the margins of the Pakistani Muslim community were besmirching the good name of the community and were behaving in a way that they shouldn't behave, and you were furious about the fact that your family, who are of good character, are being smeared by both the perpetrators and, actually, to be fair, the police, who say that everyone in the Pakistani community is involved.
Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't say my family's been like besmirched or anything, but I just think it's obviously the portrayal in the media is that all the same, but and nobody from the community is speaking out on. Everyone's too scared to talk about it. But
what are they scared of? They're scared of retribution by these gangs. Because that's what we need. I heard someone saying Pakistan Muslim communities should come out in protest against these people who are giving them a bad name. But is it because they're scared of these gangs that they won't do that, or what's the reason?
I think they're scared of both. Some of the gangs. Some of these gangs have a real
Well, we know what scumbags they are.
I mean, scumbags, dangerous, and also they don't want to attract more, headlines. So obviously,
no, but that would be a good headline, wouldn't it? The Pakistani Muslim community coming out against these people, and it might actually help.
The problem is there's a degree to which this is true, where people, the migrant communities, often are very nervous about admitting the truth because they feel that will besmirch them more. I know, Asher knows, and I think we can say that we've got a fair degree of expertise in this area, that from a media perspective, a Pakistani protest against the grooming gangs would be covered by everyone because it's such good news and it's such a positive story.
Apart from the BBC and Channel 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If the protest happened, I'd be totally on that. Totally support that. Yeah, definitely.
But it doesn't really happen, does it? And you know, we don't hear. You do hear occasionally people speaking out, and there are very brave people. And we saw at Finsbury Park when they threw out Abu Hamza onto the street, and the police shut the street for him rather than listen to the French and Americans who said he's a wanted terrorist until they did extradite him and locked him up for life.
I mean, sorry, just to dovetail onto that. I mean, let's just be clear. The mosque turned round and went, Abu Hamza is a threat to national security. That's why we've banned him. And we said, oh, we must shut the street so he can keep going. I mean, you know, why would you do that? What is the mentality of doing that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah, it's just the scared of political correctness. But bad behaviour needs to be called out, and people should not stop being scared. Really.
Can I ask you a question? So I know that you consider yourself fairly liberal and all that sort of thing, but when we talk about these threat and fear and all this sort of thing, how does it physically manifest itself? I mean, look. You don't give out your surname. Not that we particularly asked you to do it. You're not a contributor. You're a caller, therefore you don't have to. And you can call with a fake name. It doesn't bother me as long as what you're saying is the truth. But what would happen if you were identified as somebody who'd called out the community in the way that you've done on these shows? What would happen at mosque or whatever? Would there be a backlash? What sort of things would get said?
Well, there won't necessarily be a backlash, but they'd be like, oh, why are you attracting attention? Why are you talking about this difficult stuff? We get enough hate, this and that. But I just always say to that, well, if the wrongdoing, it needs to be called out. You can't be scared about not speaking. That's like self-censorship. You should, when there's wrongdoing, when there's atrocities, you need to call it out. That's what I think.
And are people talking amongst your community about all this trouble, and what are they saying about it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot on.
Are they actually saying we've got to do something about this? You know.
Oh, yeah.
If they all came out against it.
I mean, they're saying like the people that obviously good sane people are saying that the punishment really needs to come down, not like 15, 20-year prisons, like 50, 100-year prisons. Deport people, deport their families if you can. You know, like really harsh punishments.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing about Pakistani Muslims. They're no social liberals when it comes to crime and punishment, right? The idea that they are well up for letting people off the hook who commit crime. It's like when people turn around and go, "Oh, I bet if you burnt a Bible in Mecca, you'd get away with it." Would you? No. You would. Well, you would do.
In Pakistan, some of the laws there will do the same to the person as what they did, the perpetrator as what they did. So if someone, you know, tortured someone to death, they would get tortured.
There was somebody in Pakistan I was reading about who was sentenced to being strangled and then having his body butchered and dissolved in acid because that's what he'd done to the victim. I'll tell you what.
Well, that is justice, isn't it?
I will tell you one thing. The judge that did that is not going to join his local Lib Dem focus team anytime soon, right? That is not a socialist by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just wanted to ring you. It was not really about this issue. It was about that guy you had on earlier. He really riled me when he said cleanse Gaza and wipe it off. I was really angry about what he just said there.
I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I think he misspoke a bit. He was saying continue with it, but then I mean he did kind of.
He said he would do what happened in Dresden.
But carpet bombing is not acceptable.
But obviously, you know, there shouldn't be any innocent civilians there. But of course, they're used as human shields.
Yeah, well, you know, my great-grandfather served the country in the Second World War because of the British in India, because when India and Pakistan was one country before partition, so he served this country. Yeah, and in the Second World War.
There was thousands that did, wasn't there?
There was a major. I mean, the British Indian Army was significant players in North Africa. Very significant.
And the Caribbean as well, community. A lot of those served. In fact, the Australians, all the Commonwealth countries, well, the Empire as it was back then.
Do you get depressed? Not depressed, but do you get annoyed with this them and us attitude? Because I personally think that it's migrant communities being closed off that is the real risk to the country.
Are they closing themselves off a lot of the time?
Yeah, but that's the real risk to the country. I talk about tribal areas. Now, that's not a reference to the colour of people's skin, but if you have ghettos, and to be fair, I've asked people before today, well, what's the difference between what goes on in Bradford and what, say, goes on in Chinatown and Golders Green? And the point that's often made is, well, Golders Green is because of proximity to synagogues and kosher shops, and anybody can move to Golders Green, it doesn't matter. Similarly, Chinatown is close to basically a lot of the restaurants normally, because it's more an economic zone than it is a residential zone. But then when you get to closed off communities, you tend now to get the Muslim area of the town, you know, the Christian area of the town, and that does worry me.
And you have to follow their sort of rules. Like there was sort of a fake police force down in Brick Lane, and you know, saying you can't wear that stuff here. You know, women can't wear that. You can't.
Yeah, no dogs or miniskirts and things like that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I remember Trump made the point, and they said he's talking rubbish. Well, he wasn't talking rubbish. It was actually true what was going. In fact, I remember going for a curry with James up Brick Lane, and these kids sort of started on us and say, "Oh, this is our turf, man. This is our turf," and all that sort of thing.
But that's a failure in policing, isn't it, Alex?
You don't get that in Chinatown.
No, it's gangs, little men. I think that they're sort of tough and hard in little gangs, but really nobody's in. It's linked to that guy, the rapper. What you were on about the drill thing? Linked,
Is he? I mean, I don't suppose it matters what ethnicity he is, but he looked like he was an Asian chap.
I don't know if he is, actually.
I'm not. I think he's mixed race. I'm not sure. I don't really want to speculate, but I'm not sure.
I mean, look, I think, you know, as I say, I'm not interested necessarily in somebody's background. I'm worried about uncontrolled immigration, and I'm concerned about tribal areas developing and lack of integration. But I mean, I think you've got every right to turn around and say, well, look, my family served with the British. I'm here. I speak English. You know,
what do you do, Ali? What do you do in this? What do you do for a job? And
I'm a graphic designer, mate. I graduated a couple of years ago, so I'm new in the industry, graphic designer. The last 2 years.
That's a tough business now, isn't it? Because you can go around. I know people in India, actually. The people are hiring people on the internet, and you can get an amazing trademark design for like a $5, like Andre says.
It's difficult, because obviously when I started out the first year in 2022 to 23, I was trying to do self-employed, trying to make it myself, but it was too difficult. And then the last 2 years I've just worked for a company, because it's so hard to break.
And what sort of company is it? A newspaper thing, or what is it? Just a station?
No, it's an advertising marketing company.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good.
So actually, the reality is, if you're a sole trader, so people like me and my little YouTube channel would go to the very cheap providers, whereas News UK that own this radio station, they'd go to a big agency. And actually, a high quality sole trader in the UK, I would suggest, is quite a hard job.
And you have to follow the laws as well, where you don't, if it's someone in South Africa, you know, you don't have to follow the employment laws, and you don't have to do certain taxes like national insurance, because, you know.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of red tape. It was really difficult when I was trying to do it myself employed and trying to make it on myself. It's just really difficult.
And is your future in the UK? Are you going to stay here and build up on that business or on your work, or are you going to get out? And where are you going to go if you're going to leave?
I mean, me and family, we spent a lot of time going to Dubai, so. But I personally wouldn't want to live there. It's just
you get bored of all those, you know, shiny buildings and nice roads.
Exactly. Well, no, my grandma said that because obviously she's lived here all with my granddad. She was saying to that you kids that are born here in Britain, like when I don't know if she talked about everybody. She was talking about us when we're born here and we move to the country. It's not the same. We can't hack it there, and we always end up coming back.
Yeah, you come back. You can't hack it there, Ali. Just stay here.
Okay, well, somebody said, hey, great show. Just wondering, when a Muslim is up in court, or indeed sworn into a jury, do they swear on the Bible? No, you can pick your own religious text.
Quran, or even if you're not religious, you swear on something else.
You do an affirmation that you promise.
The Star Trek thing.
But I'll tell you what, when you see them speaking in the House of Commons and they're leaning on those boxes, those dispatch boxes have all the religious texts in them, Bible, Quran,
a whole
Torah,
smorgasbord
all that
of religious
sort of thing.
texts.
And you consider to be swearing on those religious texts when you speak. That's why they grip. Well, it's not why they grip the dispatch box, but it's
they're just nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks so much, Ali. We love Ali. We think he's a good bloke.
Yeah, man.
And now on to Cindy from Michigan. Cindy, how are you, my dear?
Howdy doody.
Hey, best show in the world. I'm telling you. I love you guys.
You say that to everyone you come on there with.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Not the best show in the world.
Thanks, man.
I said Mike Graham was the best presenter in the universe.
Well, all right, then.
You guys too. But I want to say
hurtful.
the BBC is abhorrent.
Yeah.
They're gruesome for having played that song.
Yeah.
But I do want to protect free speech, but not for murderers. It should be illegal.
Well, I'll tell you what I would say, Cindy. I'm quite happy for him to indulge in that rap in his prison cell where he belongs. But I think, but the concern I've got is somebody who does that is I mean, he's already murdered one child, because a 16-year-old is a child, and I think if he's singing about... If he's singing
about your crime.
Yeah, well, I think it's worse than that, actually. I think that suggests that he is at a risk of doing it again.
Oh, absolutely. But think of what it does for the family. That's just abhorrent. The BBC should be shut down. They need to be
sold
banned.
off piece by piece.
Yes.
I mean, it began in the States where you're from. I mean, you know, that's where it came from. How, you know, it's a terrible
somebody says that rap music started with doo-wop in the 1920s.
Well, actually, if you watch W.H. Auden Night Post, he's rapping on that. So W.H. Auden was doing it in the 1930s.
But that's a whole nother discussion. I'm just glad that you guys are around. Let's end this on a great note. You guys...
She even knows out times.
Let me tell you, this channel goes from strength to strength. I know it doesn't always look like that because we've been through so many different changes and trying to work things out. But I'm telling you, we're going from strength to strength, and you know, we appreciate all the support that you get. So